Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this what if story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐒𝐻𝐬 on Wattpad. Now let's start. Today was a Friday, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 had just finished school. It would be a few more weeks until 𝐒𝐮𝐬 and their best friend, Izuku Midoriya, could finally apply to the school they had always dreamed of attending. Izuku called out to 𝐒𝐮𝐬, excitedly sharing that his mother was making curry for dinner and inviting 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to join them. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, with shoulder-length brown hair and brown eyes, explained that they had to prepare their boat for a weekend trip, leaving around 8 p.m. to get ahead at the fishing grounds. Izuku, feeling a bit down for forgetting, was reassured by 𝐒𝐮𝐬 that it was okay. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 planned to make enough this weekend to avoid going out for another 3 weeks, promising to see Izuku on Monday. After saying goodbye, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 walked to the train station and boarded the train for a 20-minute ride to the fisheries. Listening to music, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 felt the anticipation of the upcoming trip. Upon arriving at the station, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 made their way to the dock, easily identifiable by the lawn chairs and umbrellas. Living on the boat and using it for their livelihood, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was well known among the fishermen at Takashi's fishery, many of whom were friends due to their parents' connections. Although some looked down on 𝐒𝐮𝐬 for being quirkless, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 took comfort in the support of friends like Izuku and his mother, 𝐾𝐞𝐭, who treated 𝐒𝐮𝐬 like family since their own parents had passed away. As 𝐒𝐮𝐬 approached their boat, hard merchandise, a cheerful older man named Mr. Suzuki waved. They exchanged greetings, discussing their plans for the weekend. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 planned to go out today and tomorrow, returning on Sunday, while Mr. Suzuki was leaving the next morning. They agreed to keep in touch and possibly team up for the trip. After preparing the boat, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 fueled up and set off from the harbor. Meanwhile, Izuku returned home, greeted warmly by his mother, who was cooking dinner. They discussed 𝐒𝐮�E's plans, with 𝐾𝐞𝐭 expressing concern about the risks of fishing. Izuku defended 𝐒𝐮�'s experience and strength, and they both prepared for dinner, enjoying each other's company while discussing their day. As they ate, the news reported a weather forecast warning of a Category 2 typhoon expected to hit the coast near Tokyo. The forecast advised fishermen and smaller leisure boats to stay ashore due to dangerous waves and winds. Both Izuku and 𝐾𝐞𝐭 felt anxious, knowing 𝐒𝐮� was out at sea, hoping for their safety. Out on the water, 𝐒𝐮� listened to the radio forecast, realizing they were nearly 15 miles from shore. They debated returning, knowing it would waste ice and fuel, but ultimately decided to continue, determined to make a profit. 𝐒𝐮� contacted Mr. Suzuki over the radio to inform him of their decision, receiving a cautious response to be careful. As 𝐒𝐮� battled 5-foot waves and 10 miles per hour winds, they worked to set out yellowfin tuna lines while singing along to the music. After catching 30 yellowfin, the worsening conditions prompted 𝐒𝐮� to pull in the lines and secure the fish in the ice compartment. As darkness fell, the waves grew more challenging and the radio crackled with updates about the worsening weather, advising smaller boats to return to shore. Frustrated with the unreliable radio, 𝐒𝐮� fought against the increasingly rough sea. Just when they thought they had control, a rogue wave crashed over the stern, flooding the deck. Struggling to regain balance, 𝐒𝐮� found the engine had cut out. Faced with the choice of attempting to restart the engine or sending an SOS, 𝐒𝐮� made the decision to call for help, knowing it was the safest option. You grabbed your radio and immediately sent out an SOS call, reporting that your engine had died and you were drifting while taking on water. An emergency response boat informed you they were on the way, but they were 14 miles out, so you had to hold on. You tried your best, but Mother Nature had other plans. Another rogue wave, this time from behind, flooded the rear area and burst through the back door, filling the interior and sealing the boat's fate. In your emergency life suit and jacket, you made your way to the front of the boat to open the life raft, but a massive wave hit, knocking you off balance. You struggled to get back to the boat, but the currents kept you just out of reach. With all your strength, You prayed to make it back, but your efforts were met with a harsh reality as you were slammed against the side of the boat, feeling the impact resonate through your body. The Coast Guard continued trying to reach you, attempting to locate you based on your emergency transponder. Suddenly, your signal disappeared. The captain, confused and concerned, ordered the crew to return home and prepare a search party for the next day, knowing his boat was too small for the approaching storm. The crew hesitated but ultimately obeyed. The following day, Izuku was watching a show with his mother when an emergency news broadcast interrupted their program. Izuku wondered if it was about more villains, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬 expressed her hope that it wasn't, given the chaos around them. The news reporter announced that the Coast Guard had lost contact with multiple fishing vessels, including the 𝐼𝐼𝐻. Images of the crew members and boats flashed on the screen, and the news promised updates as they became available. Both Izuku and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 wore expressions of fear and shock, realizing that he had promised to be safe, but now he could be lost at sea. They could only hope for his safety. A news report confirmed that 𝐼𝐻 boat had gone missing, and upon hearing this, Mitsuki rushed to her son's room. She knocked on the door, and Bakugo shouted in frustration. Mitsuki informed him that 𝐼𝐻 was presumed missing, and an official search was set for the next morning. After a moment of silence, Bakugo opened the door, his face reflecting shock as he processed the news. You felt yourself lying on a hard surface, which was strange considering you had just been fighting for your life in the water. As you opened your eyes, you quickly raised them to shield against the bright light above you. You wondered if you had died. A voice confirmed that you had passed on, and as you scrambled to your feet, you saw a woman in white robes smiling at you. You breathed, feeling overwhelmed. The woman explained that you were not in the afterlife, but you had a mission to protect your world. Confused, you questioned what she meant by a mission. She revealed that you were given a second chance, but only if you were willing to accept it. She gestured for you to listen as she explained that the hero's reluctance to kill would lead to their downfall, allowing villains to grow stronger. She presented you with a small microchip, explaining that it would allow you to communicate and would activate when you returned to your world. The better you performed in school and your hero work, the more rewards you would earn. As you began to glow brightly, voices echoed around you, indicating that you had been found. The woman introduced herself as Gabriel, leaving you with questions as she vanished from your sight. When the light faded, you found yourself surrounded by men in fishing outfits, and the pain from your injuries hit you all at once. You weakly questioned what had happened. It was an appealing Monday afternoon, with the sun shining and seagulls flying overhead, when a fisherman spotted a black and orange figure on the water. He called to his fishing buddy, who grabbed his binoculars to take a closer look. They speculated whether it was a life raft from one of the boats that had gone down over the weekend and decided to check it out, speeding toward the raft. As he approached, he noticed markings on the raft that read 𝐒𝐻. The crew began to fumble around, urgency in their movements. They pulled the raft closer and opened the flap, revealing someone unconscious with dried blood on their body. The captain exclaimed that they needed to get him on board and contact the Coast Guard for medical assistance. As they pulled him out, he stirred for a moment, weakly questioning what was happening. The crew member urged him to save his strength, assuring him that help was on the way. They lifted him into the boat and instructed the crew to turn around and head for home, accelerating back with determination. The journey back was tense, filled with anticipation. Upon arriving, they were met with news teams, onlookers with cameras, and medical crews. As the medical team boarded, they assessed the situation, noting that he appeared dehydrated and had several broken bones. They hurriedly lifted him onto a stretcher, but the sight of flashing cameras capturing his distress angered the fishermen. One of them remarked that the boy had likely endured a nightmare, only to return to a swarm of cameras. Meanwhile, Izuku returned home from school, feeling downcast after 3 days of 𝐼𝐻's disappearance. The atmosphere felt unusually quiet, likely due to Bakugo's absence. Upon entering his house, he heard his mother scream for him. Rushing to the living room, he found her pointing at the television, where the latest news report was unfolding. The report revealed that a fisherman had been located after 3 days at sea, with a picture of 𝐼𝐻 appearing on the screen. The report detailed how 𝐼𝐻 had been found floating in a life raft, far from the original distress point. The captain of the fishing vessel recounted how he initially mistook the raft for a buoy until he saw the name and rescued the boy, who was in a dire state. Izuku's mood shifted dramatically, tears welling in his eyes as his mother embraced him, relieved that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻𝐿 was alive. They shared a moment of emotional release on the couch, overwhelmed by the news. Bakugo, on the other hand, clenched his fists in frustration, vowing to confront 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 for making everyone worry. As 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 began to regain consciousness, he was met with blinding lights and the sound of beeping machines. Attempting to sit up, he felt a sharp pain in his chest, a reminder of the accident that had occurred. Overwhelmed by frustration and sadness, he lamented his decision to venture out, realizing that he had lost everything. Suddenly, he noticed a display in his vision indicating that a system was booting up. A voice introduced itself as his personal assistant, 𝐼𝐻𝐬, who informed him that she had been searching for a suitable location for a base. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻, feeling exhausted, declined to observe the options for now, expressing his sense of loss and the need to stay with Izuku. 𝐼𝐻𝐬 revealed that 𝗂𝐵RIEL had gifted him a boat, which brought tears to his eyes. Just then, Izuku and Bakugo entered the room, both staring at him in shock. Izuku held flowers, clearly emotional, while Bakugo maintained a neutral expression, holding a card that read, "Get well soon." 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 greeted them, and Izuku, overwhelmed with concern, began to ramble about how worried he had been. Bakugo interrupted, chastising Izuku for his chatter, reminding him that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 had just woken up. After a brief exchange, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 reassured them that he was doing okay, despite his injuries. Izuku mentioned that his mother had offered 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 a place to stay since he had lost his boat. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 hesitated, realizing they were unaware of the full situation, and suggested discussing living arrangements once he fully healed. As they continued to talk, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 playfully teased Bakugo about his tough exterior, prompting Bakugo to defend himself. After some light-hearted banter, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 expressed gratitude for their support and mentioned he would be out of the hospital soon. As they left, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 turned to 𝐼𝐻𝐬, inquiring about the boat's storage location and how to manage the situation. 𝐻𝐻𝐬 confirmed that it was at his dock and offered to reveal coordinates for a potential new base, which 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 agreed to explore, eager to distract himself from the current circumstances. It was just open ocean shrouded in a thick haze. Upon closer inspection, behind the rocks and a dog, a massive island emerged, stretching 15 miles in diameter. The southern edge of the island was bordered by tall, impassable mountains, with a wide opening that snaked into the island, revealing a vast natural harbor. Beyond that lay expansive flatlands filled with fields of grain, and to the north, there were large airstrips accompanied by hangars. In the center of the island was an area spacious enough for a city the size of London, but instead of towering skyscrapers, there were small buildings, barracks, and structures adorned with radar dishes. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 marveled at the sight, realizing the island was in an isolated part of the ocean, far from shipping lanes and fishery areas. Surrounding the island were shallow waters and sharp rocks, making it perilous for any ship that dared to trespass. The boat was equipped with a map of the area, confirming the warnings. As 𝐒𝐮𝐻 inspected the island further, the cliffs at the harbor's entrance reminded them of the cliffs of Gibraltar. To the east, a small mountain range housed another airfield, its elevated runway peeking out from the mountains. Along the island's ridges were anti-aircraft gun placements and radar spikes, while the formidable Gibraltar Mountains featured defense gun emplacements, making the hillside resemble a porcupine. Feeling exhilarated, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 had fully recovered from their injuries. Upon returning to school, everyone was curious about their well-being, but 𝐒𝐮𝐻 brushed off the questions, focusing instead on preparing for the UA entrance exam. 𝐾𝐮𝐽 was enthusiastic about 𝐒𝐮𝐻 living with her, but 𝐒𝐮𝐻 fabricated a story about having a backup boat in case anything happened to the original. After spending the first few days with 𝐾𝐮𝐽, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 finally made it to the wharf, where they were greeted by their fisherman friends. After passing them, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 reached their new boat, which was 5 feet longer than the previous one, 9 years newer, and equipped with state-of-the-art technology. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 settled into the new, comfortable leather couch, feeling at home. Anna suggested that since they were alone, 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 should try out their powers. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 was intrigued and inquired about how to proceed. Anna explained that 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 could summon anything from a fictional universe, like a character from a sci-fi series or a fantasy world. Excited, 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 decided to try summoning first. They concentrated on a character, and a bright light enveloped the boat, revealing a towering robot. The robot greeted 𝐒/𝐻𝐿, asking for their command. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿, realizing it was just a test, instructed the robot to disappear, and it complied, vanishing in another flash of light. Next, 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 thought of a character to transform into. Another bright light surrounded them, and they felt a change. When 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 looked in the mirror, they were surprised to see a familiar figure, complete with an iconic accessory. They began making references to the character, enjoying the moment until they decided to revert back to their original self, feeling the transformation fade away. With only 4 days left to prepare for the UA entrance exams, 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 knew they needed to focus on training. Midoriya had been studying diligently, leaving 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 feeling behind. Just then, a voice reminded 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 that they could utilize the strengths of characters without transforming or summoning, though it could only be done sporadically. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 decided to study for the written exam instead. Anna suggested they visit the new base to familiarize themselves with the location. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 agreed, eager to test out their new boat. As they set off, the boat handled beautifully. After traveling about 30 miles, the navigation unit automatically charted a course for the middle of the ocean. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 found it impressive and noted that it was better to explore now than to risk plunging the world into chaos later. Upon arriving at the destination, 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 was greeted by heavy fog and tall, sharp rocks. Thankfully, the advanced navigation device guided them safely through the rocky terrain. After a few minutes, the fog cleared, revealing a breathtaking sight. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 noticed a waterway between the cliffs that led to the main bay. They navigated through the serpentine passage, which served as a natural barrier, ensuring that any unprepared intruders would be lost. Emerging into the main harbor, 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 was awestruck by its size, realizing it could accommodate up to 500 Nimitz-class aircraft carriers. Just then, a notification appeared, welcoming 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 to the island and explaining the mechanics of their new venture. They learned that they would start with smaller warships, with the potential to unlock better ships based on their performance in the real world, all while maintaining secrecy to avoid global chaos. 𝐒/𝐻𝐿 felt a mix of excitement and apprehension, but the prospect of adventure was enticing. Another notification revealed new ship classes available for selection, including various destroyers and a premium battleship. 𝐒/𝐿 eagerly opted for a selection of destroyers and battleships, hearing the sounds of machinery powering up in the distance. With a sense of purpose, 𝐒/𝐿 looked for a place to dock and noticed a smaller, personalized dock to the left, complete with their favorite things and an RV. You docked and walked inside the rig, admiring the early 2000s aesthetic. After exploring, you spotted a Jeep parked nearby. You climbed in, and as if guided by an invisible hand, a route appeared before you. A few minutes later, you arrived at what seemed to be the main area. However, you felt a twinge of unease as you noticed various flags adorning the largest building, including American, Japanese, British, French, Soviet, Italian, and some unsettling symbols. You reassured yourself, acknowledging that these flags represented the countries you could utilize. Still, you expressed concern about someone mistakenly interpreting the presence of those symbols. Entering the building, you were greeted by unfamiliar faces. Apparently, Gabriel had created them to manage the facility. You ascended the stairs to what appeared to be your room, marked with your name on the door. Inside, it resembled a luxurious penthouse, complete with a war room featuring a map of Japan. You noticed 2 large buttons on a table and approached them. Unsure of their function, you pressed the middle one, and a strange purple glow illuminated a screen that read, New, Des Moines-class heavy cruiser. A similar bar appeared in your vision, and you settled on 6. You pressed the left button, and a golden glow emerged from the screen, revealing, New, William Halsey. The double doors across the room swung open, revealing William Halsey himself. He greeted you and inquired about your orders. You suggested monitoring the area for now, and he acknowledged your request before departing. Another purple glow appeared, displaying new 𝐼𝐚𝐬. He too asked for instructions, and you told him to do whatever was necessary. Curious, you pressed the right button, and the screen displayed options for troop training and new building constructions to enhance productivity or leisure. A voice reminded you that you didn't always need to return your boat. Teleportation was an option. You questioned why this hadn't been mentioned earlier, to which the voice simply replied that you hadn't asked. Determined to focus on your upcoming exam, you decided to return to your boat. As you started it and set sail, you marveled at how swiftly you moved across the water. Upon reaching land, you headed to Midoriya's house, as 𝐒𝐮𝐬 had insisted you join them for dinner instead of dining alone. After knocking, Izuku answered the door, greeting you warmly. You exchanged pleasantries and asked about dinner, to which he excitedly replied that they were having curry. You dashed toward the kitchen, only to be intercepted by 𝐒𝐮𝐬, who informed you that dinner wasn't ready yet. Finally, the curry was served, and you eagerly dug in, expressing your delight. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 acknowledged your love for the dish and mentioned that she couldn't bear the thought of you having to eat alone after everything you had been through. Izuku then inquired about how you managed to afford a new boat. You explained that you had saved money for emergencies and still needed to pay it off. As you discussed the entrance exam, Izuku began to sweat nervously. You noticed and asked if the curry was too spicy for him. He quickly reassured you that he was fine, just feeling the heat. You encouraged him to try the salsas you made, claiming they would help him build a tolerance for spicy food. Izuku hesitated, knowing that revealing his quirk to you was a sensitive matter. He feared that you might connect the dots, given how much you knew about All Might and his abilities. After finishing dinner, you thanked 𝐒𝐮𝐬 for the meal and mentioned that you needed to start training, not wanting to impose on them. As you were about to leave, you turned back to ask Izuku if he knew what the written part of the exam would entail, but he admitted he didn't. You bid farewell and left, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬 sighed, concerned about Izuku's tendency to overexert himself. Izuku, feeling the weight of his secret, pulled out his phone and called someone for help. He explained his fears about you potentially discovering his quirk. The voice on the other end reassured him that they would work on his tendency to blurt things out later, advising him to focus on the task ahead. The day of the entrance exam arrived. You dressed casually in a shirt that read "Monkey Business" and a pair of gray sweats. You approached Izuku's door and rang the bell, hearing him fumble nervously inside. When he opened the door, his mother stood behind him, and you greeted her. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 asked if you both were ready, and you confirmed that you were. She reminded you to be careful and to call her once the exam was over. After a tight hug from her, which felt like it might crush you, you and Izuku made your way to the train station. On the way, you noticed him muttering to himself more than usual. You checked in on him, and he admitted to feeling nervous. You reassured him that it was okay, and together, you prepared for the challenges ahead. Both 𝐼𝐴/N and Izuku felt nervous as they approached you. High school, realizing they might be the only two students trying out without a quirk. They knew they had to support each other. As they reached the imposing gate, they admired the badge above the arch. Stepping inside, 𝐼/N marveled at the statues in the courtyard, with Izuku following closely behind as other students began to arrive. Katsuki Bakugo approached them, his usual fiery demeanor on display. He called out to Izuku, who stammered in response, while 𝐼/N playfully greeted Bakugo. Bakugo demanded they move aside, threatening to unleash his power, which 𝐼/N jokingly acknowledged, noting the chilly weather. Izuku, trying to rally everyone's spirits, suggested they all do their best that day, though 𝐼/N teased him about his awkward gestures. Bakugo brushed past them, earning whispers of admiration from other students who recognized him as the one who had fought off a villain. Feeling the chill, 𝐼/N urged Izuku to move along. As they walked, Izuku was lost in thought, reflecting on how All Might had inspired him to become a hero. In his excitement, he tripped, but a girl used her quirk to catch him mid-fall. She apologized for not asking first, and Izuku was left blushing and speechless. After a moment, she bid him farewell, leaving him in a daze. 𝐻/N, witnessing this, couldn't help but laugh at Izuku's reaction. 𝐻/N congratulated Izuku on his interaction, encouraging him to embrace the moment. Embarrassed, he hurried up the stairs into the school, with 𝐻/N following behind, ensuring everything was recorded perfectly for 𝐒𝐮𝐽. Once inside the auditorium, they took their seats, and after a few moments, Bakugo joined them. The lights dimmed, and the stage lit up, revealing Present Mic, the voice hero. Present Mic greeted the candidates, trying to energize the crowd, but silence filled the room. Feeling sympathetic, 𝐻/N jumped up, prompting Izuku to panic and try to pull them back. Undeterred, 𝐻/N shouted enthusiastically, drawing attention from everyone, including Present Mic, who appreciated the unexpected enthusiasm. As the presentation continued, Present Mic explained the practical exam, detailing the mock battles that would take place in urban environments. Each student received a card indicating their battle group, and 𝐻/N noted the details, including their BMI, which surprised them. Present Mic clarified the types of targets they would face, emphasizing the importance of strategy. Suddenly, a student stood up, questioning a supposed error in the materials. 𝐻/N rolled their eyes at the overly serious tone, while the student continued to criticize Izuku for his muttering. This drew laughter from the surrounding students, and 𝐻/N, unable to hold back, stood up to defend Izuku. They confronted the student, asserting their right to speak and challenging his attitude. Present Mic intervened to diffuse the tension, and the student reluctantly sat down, visibly upset. 𝐻/N returned to their seat, muttering about their disdain for such attitudes. Bakugo, sitting nearby, couldn't hide his amusement at the situation, as he too found the student irritating. He wouldn't admit how well 𝐻/N had bested him. Mike then explained the rest of the exam parameters before everyone filed out to their respective battle areas. 𝐻/N bid farewell to Izuku while walking over to the gathering area, which was filled with other participants. The sounds of explosions echoed from the other battle zones. Some kids approached 𝐻/N, expressing gratitude for silencing an annoying competitor, which prompted a laugh. As they stood in front of the gate, waiting for it to open, a girl with pink hair and goggles approached. She greeted 𝐻/N enthusiastically and asked if they wanted to see her creations. 𝐻/N was taken aback but relieved when the girl revealed a large backpack instead of something unexpected. She introduced herself as 𝐒𝐻/ℏ, sharing her dream of having her inventions sold worldwide. 𝐻/N questioned the rules about bringing such items into the arena, to which 𝐒 explained that she had received special permission due to her quirk. Curiosity piqued, 𝐻/N asked why she would seek help from a competitor. 𝐒 insisted that she believed 𝐻/N would make a good partner for testing her inventions. After some playful banter, 𝐒 handed 𝐻/N the backpack, urging them to take it as the doors to the battle zone suddenly opened, prompting everyone to charge inside. 𝐻/N sprinted into the arena, their strong legs carrying them past many participants. As they caught up to the leaders, multiple 1- and 2-point robots appeared, charging down the street. While others chose their targets, 𝐻/N focused on a 2-pointer with wheels for legs. They called out to their support AI/NA for a test run. As the robot approached, 𝐻/N executed a powerful kick, disabling the robot and surprising themselves with the result. With newfound confidence, 𝐻/N continued searching for more robots to fight. They witnessed another competitor struggling against a 2-pointer and quickly intervened, pushing the competitor out of harm's way just in time. After rolling under the robot and delivering a decisive blow, 𝐻/N earned more points. The exam progressed, and with 2 minutes remaining, the ground trembled ominously. A colossal 0-pointer robot emerged, prompting 𝐻/N to retreat with the others. As the giant robot swung at buildings, debris fell, and one piece landed on the backpack 𝐒 had given 𝐻/N. Suddenly, the backpack powered up, and 𝐻/N felt a surge of energy as it activated. They were lifted off their feet and propelled through the city, limbs flailing as they tried to regain control. Other participants watched in confusion as 𝐻/N soared through the air, heading straight for the 0-pointer. Bracing for impact, 𝐻/N collided with the giant robot, causing it to topple backward. Onlookers gasped as they saw 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐸n's legs sticking out from the fallen robot. An alarm signaled the end of the exam, and as help arrived, 𝐒𝐮 found themselves wedged inside. A short, elderly lady approached, surprising everyone as she effortlessly pulled 𝐒𝐮 free. Though 𝐒𝐮 was sore and bruised, the lady, known as Recovery Girl, tended to their injuries with a soothing kiss and a magical gummy. Grateful, 𝐒𝐮 thanked her and expressed frustration toward May for the unexpected turn of events. The results of the exam were promised to arrive in a few days. On the way out, 𝐒𝐮 noticed neither Izuku nor Katsuki, perhaps their exams had concluded earlier. Exhausted, 𝐒𝐮 took the train home, feeling the weariness settle in their arms. After a refreshing shower, they settled on the couch and powered up their PS5, reflecting on the day. It had been a good day. 3 days later, after the entrance exams, 𝐒𝐮, Izuku, and Bakugo were all on edge. Izuku mumbled nervously, Bakugo was more irritable than usual, and 𝐒𝐮 simply felt anxious. Time passed slowly, and 𝐒𝐮 couldn't help but think about the wait. Can't they deliver things faster? Anna explained that they had to evaluate and send results to over 4,000 kids, which wasn't something that could be done in a day. 𝐒𝐮 thought they could still move a little quicker. Anna suggested they head to base since it had been over a week since their last visit. 𝐒𝐮 hesitated, expressing a reluctance to work, but Anna reminded them that once school started, things would become even more hectic. Since 𝐒𝐮 was bored and had nothing to do, Anna insisted they should go to the base. 𝐒𝐮 was startled by her sudden change in tone, realizing they didn't even know she could do that. With a sigh, 𝐒𝐮 agreed to set off. After what felt like hours, though Anna said it had only been about 45 minutes since 𝐒𝐮 had passed out, they finally arrived. Around the island, there were numerous construction planks, indicating the building of anti-ship and anti-aircraft guns. Larger naval guns were being integrated into the sides of the island, while anti-aircraft installations were being constructed on the mountain surfaces. Anna noted that defensive measures had been automatically assigned in case someone they didn't want nearby wandered too close. 𝐒𝐮 acknowledged that it was a good idea but questioned how anyone could navigate through the treacherous terrain. As they continued through the bay, 𝐒𝐮 spotted all their finished warships, from small destroyers to massive aircraft carriers. A small screen appeared, displaying their inventory, which included various classes of destroyers, cruisers, battleships, and tanks. 𝐒𝐮 decided to postpone a daily spin on the inventory wheel until they were in the war room, opting to dock and hop into a nearby jeep while jamming to some tunes. Upon arrival, 𝐒𝐮 noticed something new. All the flags of major nations were displayed, with a massive pirate flag in the center. Anna explained that she had scanned 𝐒𝐮's memories and discovered that their favorite movie was Pirates of the Caribbean. 𝐒𝐮 found it cool but was taken aback by the idea of Anna going through their memories. Anna reassured 𝐒𝐮 that she had only accessed relevant ones. 𝐒𝐮 felt relieved but insisted that it wasn't necessary to scan any further. Inside, they met their receptionist, whom 𝐒𝐮 had named Gloria for simplicity. 𝐒𝐮 then made their way to the impressive war room to spin the wheel again. As the slot machine lit up, 𝐒𝐮 excitedly prepared to spin. After a thrilling moment, the wheel slowed down, revealing new ships and construction orders. 𝐒𝐮 expressed curiosity about the new additions, wishing they knew more about them. Anna pointed out that the education system didn't cover much about World War II, to which 𝐒𝐮 agreed. Anna reminded 𝐒𝐮 that they needed to head home soon, as school was approaching. 𝐒𝐮 was confused, having not received a letter from you. Anna produced a small letter with the U symbol, revealing that 𝐒𝐮 had missed this information. Upon opening it, the number 1 pro hero, All Might, congratulated 𝐒𝐮 for passing the tests with a remarkable score. Overjoyed, 𝐒𝐮 jumped with excitement, eager to share the news with Izuku. After a brief time skip, 𝐒𝐮 rushed to Izuku's house to deliver the good news. They knocked rapidly on the door, startling 𝐒𝐮𝐽, who answered. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐻𝐬 burst in, announcing their acceptance into you. Inko's face lit up with joy, and she mentioned that Izuku had received his acceptance as well. 𝐒𝐮 dashed past her and barged into Izuku's room, startling him. 𝐒𝐮 playfully demanded to know why he hadn't opened his letter yet. Izuku admitted he was nervous about being rejected due to his Quirkless status. 𝐒𝐮 reassured him, reminding him that they were in the same boat. Izuku opened his letter, and another hologram of All Might appeared, revealing that while Izuku had initially received a low score, his brave actions had earned him additional rescue points, bringing his total to a passing score. Overcome with emotion, Izuku broke down in tears, and Inko rushed in to comfort him. 𝐒𝐮 joined in for a big bear hug, celebrating the start of their journey as heroes. Finally, they stood at the gates of 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐸, the prestigious hero school every kid in Japan dreams of attending. 𝐒𝐮 stood beside Izuku, letting the reality of their achievement sink in, while Izuku nervously stammered about their success. Suddenly, they were shoved to the ground by Bakugo, who taunted them. 𝐒𝐮 responded with a playful jab, but Bakugo challenged them to say it again. The first bell rang, and Bakugo walked away. Izuku checked on 𝐒𝐮, who assured him that Bakugo was all bark and no bite. Just then, someone else greeted them. "You were the kid from the entrance exam, right?" Both of you turned to see the red-headed girl you had saved during the entrance exams. She greeted you with a bright smile, her cheeks flushed with excitement. You recognized her as Ochako. You responded enthusiastically, acknowledging that you were both in Class 1E. Izuku, standing nearby, gave a thumbs up, sharing in the excitement. Ochako then turned to Izuku, expressing her gratitude for helping her during the exam, which left him momentarily speechless, his mind racing. You waved goodbye as Ochako skipped away, and Izuku finally came back to his senses, stammering about how a girl had just talked to him. You couldn't help but tease him, grinning mischievously and suggesting that he might already have a crush. His flustered reaction only made you laugh harder as he tried to snatch your phone, fearing you would share the moment with his mom. After some playful wrestling, you both settled down, and soon it was time to head to class. You stood before the large door, feeling a mix of intimidation and excitement. You opened it to find a boy with square glasses scolding Bakugo for being rude. Bakugo, ever defiant, shouted back, causing the situation to escalate until the glasses-wearing boy, 𝗟𝗟𝐿𝐿, introduced himself with a formal bow. You introduced yourself and Izuku, who waved from behind you. 𝗟𝐿𝐿 expressed his eagerness to get to know both of you better. Just then, Ochako entered the room again, greeting everyone cheerfully. However, a voice from across the room interrupted the chatter. Aizawa, resembling a sleepy caterpillar in his sleeping bag, introduced himself as your homeroom teacher and instructed everyone to take their seats. Once everyone was settled, Aizawa announced that it was time to start class. He pulled out gym uniforms and told everyone to change for a training exercise. You thought it was a bit early for such an intense activity, but Aizawa was already moving on to the quirk evaluation test. Surprised murmurs filled the room as Aizawa explained that this test would show how much everyone had improved since middle school. He picked up a heavy ball and called Bakugo to go first. With a fierce grin, Bakugo launched the ball high into the air, achieving an impressive distance. The excitement in the room grew, and 𝐿𝐿𝐿 remarked on the thrill of using their quirks. Mina, a pink-haired girl, eagerly expressed her longing to go next, but Aizawa's sudden shift in demeanor silenced the room. He sternly reminded everyone that this was not a game and that they were training to face real challenges. He then raised the stakes by announcing that the last-place student would be expelled, causing panic among the classmates. As the test continued, you paired up with a girl named Momo for the 40-meter dash. With the help of your quirk, you sped ahead, finishing in an impressive time. Momo introduced herself, and you both exchanged pleasantries before moving on to the next tests. When it was your turn for the shot put, Bakugo taunted you, but you stepped up confidently. With a boost from your quirk, you threw the ball with incredible force, leaving everyone in awe. Aizawa noted your remarkable distance, suggesting you might be the strongest in the class. Izuku followed, but Aizawa had to erase his quirk to prevent him from injuring himself. Despite the setback, Izuku managed to throw the ball a respectable distance. Bakugo, frustrated and confused, confronted you both, but Aizawa quickly intervened, wrapping Bakugo in his scarf to silence him. As the results were posted, you scanned for your name and found you had placed fourth. Izuku, however, was last, which weighed heavily on him. Aizawa then revealed that he had been joking about the expulsion, much to everyone's relief. After class, Mina approached you with excitement, eager to know about your quirk. You hesitated, realizing you hadn't named it yet, but explained that it boosted your strength and speed. Mina was impressed, imagining the possibilities, and you both parted ways with plans to meet again in class. As you changed, a notification flashed in your vision, congratulating you on your achievements. Passing a physical test, the rewards were impressive, a power that could stay in one's body for 20% longer and a 10% reduction in downtime. New additions included a rank B Ryujo class aircraft carrier from Japan and a rank B Northampton class heavy cruiser from America, along with a Panzer IV tank as a reward. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 casually mentioned to Izuku that they were just talking to themselves, then inquired if his quirk had recently manifested like theirs. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 tried their best to act as if their quirk had truly shown up, while Izuku began to panic and sweat. He admitted that his quirk had manifested during the entrance exam, though his nervous laughter suggested otherwise. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, aware of his deception, decided to see how long it would take for him to confess the truth. The next day began in a familiar way. English class with present mic was dull, history with 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 was unremarkable, and Japanese with Midnight felt strange, as she kept casting glances in 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's direction. Although 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 was aware of her unusual behavior, they reminded themselves that they would soon turn 17 and the legal age was 16, leaving them uncertain about the situation. Now, in homeroom, the students were chatting among themselves. Mina, full of energy, shouted at Kirishima, asking about his quirk. Kirishima proudly demonstrated his ability to harden his body by hardening his left arm and swinging it around, prompting Mina to exclaim how cool it was. Suddenly, the door burst open as All Might made his entrance. He announced his arrival with enthusiasm, declaring that they would be doing hero training that day. Everyone was excited to see him and quickly prepared to change into their hero costumes. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 retrieved their outfit from the locker, ready for the training ahead. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 felt confident in their simple costume, knowing that their quirk didn't require anything extravagant. They hoped no one would think they were underprepared. After a brief wait, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 walked into the arena, the first to arrive due to the ease of their outfit. All Might was already there, dressed in his hero costume, focused on some flashcards that likely contained details about the upcoming drill. All Might was startled when he turned around to see 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. He exclaimed with surprise, recognizing them immediately. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 explained that their quirk was basic and didn't necessitate a flashy costume. All Might agreed and suggested they wait for the rest of the class. One by one, classmates emerged from the tunnel in their costumes. Bakugo appeared in a striking black and red outfit, complete with a mask reminiscent of a sci-fi character and grenade gauntlets. Finally, Izuku stepped out in a green costume that resembled a bunny, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 recalled that the ears were inspired by All Might's hair, which he had previously shown them. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 approached Izuku, who looked a bit flustered. They pointed out that he resembled a mascot and suggested he keep the hood on during emergencies to avoid being recognized. Izuku was taken aback, unsure how 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 knew this, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 simply stated it was common sense. Ochako arrived next, greeting Izuku with enthusiasm. She expressed concern over her own costume being a bit tight and then turned to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, questioning why they didn't have a more impressive outfit. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 explained that their quirk, which enhanced strength and speed, didn't require a special suit and comfort was a priority. Lita joined the conversation, complimenting everyone's costumes but questioning 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's choice of a jacket and sweatpants. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 shrugged, stating they liked it. All Might then called everyone to gather around to explain the exercise, which sounded more like a quirky movie plot than a training drill. He announced the teams, and as the names were called, it became clear that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 would be training alone. Lita raised concerns about the fairness of this arrangement, but All Might reassured everyone that 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻𝐸's exceptional performance in the entrance exam justified the decision. When asked if 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 was okay with it, 𝐒𝐮 simply stated that they were used to working alone and saw no reason to change that. All Might declared the start of the exercise, and the teams were assigned. 𝐒𝐮 noticed Izuku seemed nervous about facing Bakugo, known for his fierce competitiveness. 𝐒𝐮 encouraged Izuku to not show weakness, suggesting that if he provoked Bakugo, he might make a mistake. After a chaotic series of matches, 𝐒𝐮 found themselves facing Todoroki and Tokoyami in the final round. All Might reassured everyone that he would intervene if necessary. As 𝐒𝐮 prepared for their match, they contemplated their strategy. 𝐼𝐴, their support system, informed them that they would need to observe the opponents in action to gather data. The match began, and 𝐒𝐮 entered the building cautiously, listening for any signs of their opponents. Suddenly, Tokoyami's voice echoed as he commanded his shadowy counterpart to attack. 𝐒𝐮 was caught off guard but quickly regained composure, dodging the incoming strikes from Dark Shadow, who was growing increasingly aggressive. 𝐒𝐮 called out to 𝐼𝐴 for advice, and she suggested that Dark Shadow could only endure so much damage. Taking her words to heart, 𝐒𝐮 focused their strength and began to land significant blows on Dark Shadow, who soon showed signs of fatigue. 𝐒𝐮 taunted Tokoyami, realizing they had figured out the weakness of his shadowy partner. As Dark Shadow admitted defeat, 𝐒𝐮 turned their attention to Tokoyami, challenging him to surrender or continue the fight. After a moment of contemplation, Tokoyami chose to surrender. All Might announced Tokoyami's elimination, and 𝐒𝐮 moved on to search for Todoroki and the bomb. As they navigated the building, 𝐒𝐮 felt a chill in the air, recognizing it as Todoroki's quirk. They stealthily approached the location of the bomb, determined to secure victory. Just as they were about to reach out and touch it, the tension in the air heightened, setting the stage for the next phase of the challenge. A huge wall of ice trapped 𝐒𝐮's arm. Todoroki observed the situation and noted that it was quite predictable, advising 𝐒𝐮 not to ignore the room. 𝐒𝐮 clicked their tongue in frustration. Todoroki apologized, preparing to encase 𝐒𝐮 in ice, but before he could act, an emergency system activated. An explosion erupted, knocking all the ice away and sending Todoroki crashing into a wall. Seizing the moment, 𝐒𝐮 dashed forward and activated the bomb, signaling the end of the training exercise. The announcement echoed through the arena, declaring the hero team as the winners. 𝐒𝐮 sighed in relief and rushed to help Todoroki, guiding him to the paramedics who took him to the infirmary. Just then, a notification appeared. Congratulations! You won your first training battle. Rewards: rank, a Queen Elizabeth class battleship, nationality, Great Britain. Special reward: rank 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻𝐸, legendary warship acquired. As 𝐒𝐮 read the message, classmates approached to congratulate them on the victory. Ochako, curious, asked how 𝐒𝐮 had caused the explosion, noting that their quirk was supposed to be strength enhancement. Everyone turned to 𝐒𝐮, eager for an explanation. 𝐒𝐮 shrugged, suggesting that perhaps the excess ice had combusted, leaving the group satisfied with the answer. Afterward, 𝐒𝐮 let out a sigh of relief and decided to visit Izuku in his room. Upon entering, 𝐒𝐮 was taken aback by Izuku's condition. He looked severely injured, with his arms and chest marked by scars. 𝐒𝐮 exclaimed in disbelief about Bakugo's ferocity, questioning how he had sustained such injuries. Izuku explained that his quirk was destructive and difficult to control, leading to unintended consequences. 𝐒𝐮 expressed concern, stating that without their support, Izuku might have seriously harmed himself. Izuku agreed, acknowledging the truth in 𝐒𝐮's words. 𝐒𝐮 suggested that once he recovered, he should join them in class. Izuku agreed, and then 𝐒𝐮 noticed a skinny man in a yellow suit with messy hair. Apologizing for not noticing him, 𝐒𝐮 learned that he was a safety instructor who had come to check on Izuku. After a brief exchange, 𝐒𝐮 waved goodbye and left. Izuku reflected on the close call, thanking 𝐼/N for their quick thinking. He reminded them to stay in their muscle form around the instructor, as both he and his mother were quite protective. The mood shifted when the topic of Izuku's family came up. He revealed that his friend had lost his parents 8 years prior, leaving him to live alone on a fishing boat, following in their footsteps. All Might, who had been listening, absorbed this information with a heavy heart. Izuku reassured the instructor that 𝐼/N had moved on from their loss, and the conversation shifted back to the present. As the school day ended, Izuku emerged from the infirmary, joining 𝐼/N, 𝐿𝐸, Ochako, and 𝐼𝐻𝐸. They debated who had the best fight, with 𝐼𝐻𝐸 claiming 𝐼/N had the most impressive performance, while 𝐿ETA argued for Izuku's active engagement. 𝐼/N, however, believed Izuku's fight was the most entertaining, which made 𝐿ETA beam with pride. They arrived at the train station, and 𝐼/N prepared to depart. As they ran off, 𝐻𝐻𝐸 questioned why 𝐼/N was headed toward the ports. Izuku explained that 𝐼/N had both an after-school job and lived near there. The group was surprised to learn that 𝐼/N was an orphan, but Izuku clarified that 𝐼/N lived alone and didn't want to be a burden. He admired 𝐼/N's independence, noting how strong they were. Curiosity arose about how 𝐼/N managed life on their own, especially since fishing typically required multiple people. Izuku explained that 𝐼/N was exceptionally strong and capable, able to handle the work alone. Ochako suggested visiting 𝐼/N in the future, but Izuku felt they likely needed rest after the day's events. Meanwhile, 𝐼/N ordered the construction of 6 Queen Elizabeth battleships and the Hood, contemplating the rewards that came with challenges. 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚𝐫𝐲, the AI assistant, confirmed that the harder the challenge, the better the reward. 𝐼/N inquired about the recent explosion, and 𝐒𝐮𝐦 explained that it was a protective measure installed for their safety. Feeling tired, 𝐼/N expressed a longing to relax at home, preparing for the upcoming trip to USA. As they settled in, a news report interrupted the calm, announcing that a villain gang had robbed a bank in Tokyo and was escaping to the coast. Due to heavy fog, heroes were unable to pursue them effectively. 𝐒𝐮𝐦 reminded 𝐼/N that their first assignment had presented itself, prompting 𝐼/N to reluctantly agree to take action. Using a special tablet, 𝐼/N scanned for a fast means of transportation to intercept the villains. The mission was underway. Meanwhile, the robbers celebrated their successful heist, but their excitement was cut short by the sound of distant police sirens. Panic set in as they realized they might be caught, but one of the villains quickly devised a plan. 𝐿𝐸 was in a precarious situation, pretending to be a hostage. The heroes and police approached the temporary villain camp, where they could see the villains and their captive. The tension was palpable as the villains shouted warnings, threatening harm to the hostage if the heroes came any closer. 𝐿𝐸, in disguise, pleaded for help, unaware of the larger threat lurking in the foggy waters off the coast of eastern Japan. On board the KMS Bismarck, the captain received reports from his crew, confirming their position and readiness. He scanned the area with binoculars, spotting the villains and grinning at the opportunity. He ordered the turrets to target the villains' location, and the crew prepared for action. Meanwhile, the villains hastily loaded their stolen loot onto a sizable getaway boat. One villain expressed relief, believing they were almost in the clear. However, their plan was interrupted when they spotted the heroes trying to sneak closer. A villain threatened to harm the hostage, and 𝐿𝐸 whispered a suggestion to make the villains fear them. The villain agreed, and as a hero attempted to advance, the villain acted on their threat. With a swift motion, the villain struck, and 𝐿𝐸 let out a loud scream, causing the heroes to retreat. They realized the villains were experienced and knew how to manipulate the situation. The police decided to wait for the right moment to intervene, hoping the villains would abandon their hostage. Back on the Bismarck, the captain observed the heroes retreating to a safe distance. He understood the hostage situation was a ruse to deter the authorities. With a decisive gesture, he ordered the cannons to fire as the last villain boarded the boat. The area erupted in chaos as the powerful guns unleashed their firepower. The heroes watched in shock as the beach was bombarded, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. When the smoke cleared, they were met with a devastating scene. The villains were left incapacitated, their escape thwarted, and their boat was engulfed in flames. The police were horrified by the aftermath. As the dust settled, they noticed a silhouette of a large ship emerging from the fog. The police scrambled for binoculars to identify the vessel, but only the flags were visible. A hero used their quirk to capture an image of the flags, but the police decided it was best to retreat and report back to their superiors. Later, someone relaxed on a boat, enjoying a movie when a notification interrupted their leisure. The mission was complete, and all hostiles had been eliminated. However, a news anchor broke in with urgent reports about the villains who had been stopped, revealing that they had all been killed in a violent encounter. A video from a police body camera showed the chaos, with explosions and destruction on the beach. The news reported that officials believed a third-party ship had been responsible for the attack, but the details were unclear due to the heavy fog. As the broadcast returned to the movie, the characters discussed their feelings about the situation, pondering the implications of their actions and the attention they had drawn. In a conference room, the president and his advisors discussed the incident with members of the German government. The president expressed concern over the sudden attack on the villains, revealing the flag of the Kriegsmarine had been identified. The German officials were adamant that no such ship could be in the area, insisting that all Kriegsmarine vessels had been accounted for. The tension in the room was palpable as they navigated the complexities of the situation, each side wary of the implications of the attack and the mysterious ship that had intervened. Were they able to identify the ship? The president sadly noted that heavy fog had prevented them from seeing it, only that it was large and fast. All Might, unsure about the situation, asked what Nazis were. Everyone remembered that despite being the #1 pro-hero, All Might was not familiar with World War II. The president prepared All Might for a difficult conversation, emphasizing the importance of understanding history, and requested that he teach it at you. All Might hesitated, wondering what could be so terrible that the president was so cautious. He eventually agreed. The president explained the events of World War II, detailing Hitler's rise to power, the devastation across Europe, Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor, the war crimes committed, the Allies' counteroffensive, and the dropping of atomic bombs. All Might was left in utter shock, grappling with the horrific actions of the country he had vowed to protect. He recalled that Japan no longer maintained a large military and instead focused on innovation to atone for its past mistakes. Overwhelmed, he expressed his feelings to the president, who confirmed the truth of his statements and apologized for the way All Might had learned about it. The next day arrived much faster than anticipated. All Might had expected to be restless, but he had fallen asleep instead. Fortunately, his ship had gone unnoticed by anyone except a few heroes, keeping them safe, though it had become a hot topic. Mina excitedly mentioned the news from the previous day, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬 remarked on its intensity. Mineta expressed concern about their safety, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐿 reassured everyone that they were not in danger. The entire school buzzed with discussions about the news, making it difficult for Izuku to maintain order. He called for silence and informed the class that they were heading out for hero rescue training. As they made their way to the bus, Lita attempted to organize them into lines, but 𝐒𝐿 pointed out that it wasn't necessary. Despite Lita's embarrassment, 𝐒𝐿 comforted him, and they boarded the bus. As the bus departed for the exam facility, excitement filled the air. Ochako expressed her enthusiasm for their first training mission, while Toru looked forward to seeing everyone's quirks in action. Tsuyu noted that they would also learn about each other's personalities, except for Bakugo, whose aggressive nature was already well known. Bakugo reacted defensively, prompting Jiro to calm him down. Kaminari brought up Midoriya's quirk, which resembled All Might's, leading to a discussion about its similarities and differences. Amidst the chatter, 𝐒𝐿 had a brief exchange with Anna, who had been busy and hinted at watching something online. Their conversation was interrupted as they arrived at the facility, where everyone was awestruck by its grandeur. Izuku welcomed them to their first real hero training exercise and introduced 𝗟𝗏, the guest hero. The students were thrilled to see her. However, the atmosphere shifted when the lights flickered and went out. Izuku and 𝗟𝗏 immediately went on alert, sensing that something was amiss. Suddenly, a strange purple substance appeared in the facility, followed by a group of villains. 𝐼𝐼𝐲𝐬 instructed 𝗟𝗏 to protect the students and rushed off to confront the villains. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐲 called out to him, but 𝗟𝗏 insisted they needed to stay safe. As panic spread, the villains introduced themselves as the League of Villains. 𝗟𝗏 activated her quirk to contain them, but the same substance appeared behind her, catching her off guard. She was overwhelmed and fell to the ground, lamenting her defeat. Kaminari urged everyone to escape, but the villains prevented their exit. 𝐒/N found themselves free-falling into one of the building areas, landing with a thud. They quickly realized that Momo and Jiro were also falling towards them. The impact was surprising, but they managed to cushion the fall. Momo and Jiro apologized and helped 𝐒/N out of the ground, where they discovered they were in a facility test area. As they looked around, a group of villains approached them, taunting the trio. 𝐒/N braced themselves, realizing they were in a precarious situation. Your quirks wouldn't happen to be useful in hand-to-hand combat, would they? Momo and Jiro responded that they weren't really useful. Frustrated, 𝐒/N urged them to get behind him. The villain taunted, mocking 𝐒/N's attempt to protect his friends, claiming they would have fun with them after dealing with him. Anger surged within 𝐒/N as he considered the disgusting nature of these villains. Suddenly, a villain with a giant claw charged at him, swinging slowly and clumsily. 𝐒/N noted that these didn't seem like professional villains, perhaps just hired muscle. He ducked under the swing and retaliated with a punch to the gut, sending the villain crashing into a building. Another villain shouted in anger, and a group rushed toward 𝐒/N. He cursed under his breath, urging the girls to run back to their class. Momo asked about his safety, but 𝐒/N insisted he would be fine and ordered them to run before he lost his temper. The two girls took off, and the villain laughed, claiming 𝐒/N was just acting brave in his final moments. 𝐒/N prepared himself for the oncoming attack. Meanwhile, Izuku sat by the lake with Tsuyu and Mayonetta, watching as Mr. 𝐼𝐼𝐲𝐬 struggled against the villains. One villain questioned why All Might hadn't shown up, leaving Izuku confused about the leader's role. Tsuyu expressed her unease, noting that Mayonetta was likely in trouble again. Izuku sensed something was off as the villain suggested that if they killed some students, All might appear. The tension escalated when the villain taunted 𝐼𝐼𝐲𝐬, threatening to make him watch a student die. Time seemed to slow as a villain lunged toward Tsuyu, and Izuku felt helpless, fearing for her safety. But before the villain could strike, a sound pierced the air, and the villain collapsed, a piece of rebar embedded in his skull. The remaining villains panicked, trying to identify the source of the attack. 𝐒/N appeared, battered and bruised, his hero costume torn, but his eyes glowed a striking blue. He warned the villains that they should have checked the resumes of the lackeys they sent after him. In a flashback, 𝐒/N recalled the brutal fight he had endured, outnumbered and overwhelmed. The villains had mocked him, and he had taken a severe beating, his body bloodied and battered. Just as he felt himself slipping away, a voice urged him to stay awake, reminding him not to fall asleep. 𝐒/N struggled against the darkness, but it was too tempting. Suddenly, a glow enveloped him, healing some of his wounds, and his eyes transformed to a bright blue. He sprang to his feet, surprising the villains. His voice had changed, blending with another. 𝐒/N declared that the reason he had lost was that he didn't want to harm anyone, but that would no longer be the case. He picked up a piece of rebar and assumed a fighting stance, determined not to hold back any longer. The scene shifted back to the present, where 𝐼𝐼𝐲𝐬 lay defeated, and the three students watched in horror. 𝐒/N stood before the mob of villains, bloodied but resolute, ready to confront them. Despite being outnumbered and outmatched, he was no longer in control of his own body. The villains taunted him, suggesting he should give up, but 𝐒/N simply laughed maniacally, his blue eyes shining with a newfound intensity. He prepared to face them, ready to show them what he was truly capable of. At least my opponents had brains. The second villain questioned whether 𝐒/N was insane, but his words were cut short by the sound of a long bar striking flesh. Everyone turned to see 𝐒/N in a throwing stance, having just taken down an opponent in front of them. The remaining villains stammered in disbelief, but before he could finish his thought, 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐻 struck him with a powerful knee, followed by a fist and a kick that sent him crashing into the rubble of a collapsed building. 𝐒𝐮 then addressed the rest of the villains, challenging them about the League of Villains. They stood in stunned silence, unable to respond. 𝐒𝐮, unimpressed, declared that he had had enough fun for the day and suggested they leave while they still could. Suddenly, a projectile whizzed past his head, and he realized the villains were ready to retaliate, their weapons raised. 𝐒𝐮 remarked on their stupidity before unleashing a battle cry and charging at the villains, engaging them with nothing but his bare hands. From a distance, Izuku and Tsuyu watched the unfolding chaos. Izuku speculated that 𝐒𝐮 was using a trick to scare the villains away, but Tsuyu felt uneasy, sensing something was off about him. As they observed, a villain was struck down by 𝐒𝐮, who then kicked another into a building. Izuku felt a chill run down his spine, realizing this was not the 𝐒𝐮 he knew. When a bullet narrowly missed 𝐒𝐮, Tsuyu voiced her concern, and Izuku gulped, fearing it was a declaration of war. 𝐒𝐮 took on a peculiar stance, flexing his arms and legs wide before leaping into battle against the villains. Mineta, watching in shock, questioned 𝐒𝐮's sanity, while Izuku trembled in fear at the sight of 𝐒𝐮 overpowering the armed villains with ease. Tsuyu noted the grim reality that 𝐒𝐮 was indeed taking them down. Eventually, 𝐒𝐮 stood amidst the fallen villains, blood streaming down his face and body, creating a scene reminiscent of a horror film. When he turned to face his friends, Izuku felt a mix of fear and relief, but that quickly shifted when he noticed 𝐒𝐮's eyes had changed to a glowing blue, giving him an unsettling appearance. Before they could approach, Aizawa instructed them to head for the stairs while he assisted 𝐒𝐮. Unbeknownst to them, Aizawa soon lost consciousness. 𝐒𝐮 stood victorious over the defeated villains, feeling triumphant. However, he suddenly realized his friend Izuku was watching, and panic set in as he remembered the chaos he had caused. In a moment of distraction, he felt a strange sensation and discovered his left arm was severed at the shoulder, blood pouring from the wound. Anger surged within him as he turned to confront the villain responsible, swiftly taking him down with a punch. As the pain subsided, 𝐒𝐮 activated a quirk that nullified his injuries. He was still in a precarious situation, but he felt somewhat okay. He then faced a new adversary, a villain with hands all over his body, who revealed their plan to eliminate the symbol of peace. 𝐒𝐮 questioned their motives, and the villain commanded a monstrous creature called Nomu to attack. The creature lunged at 𝐒𝐮, delivering a powerful blow that sent him crashing into debris. Yet 𝐒𝐮 laughed maniacally, rising to face the creature again. He declared that he was not playing around and prepared to show his true strength. As Nomu charged once more, 𝐒𝐮 vanished from sight, leaving the creature confused. In an instant, 𝐒𝐮 reappeared, standing atop the defeated Nomu, holding its exposed brain. He crushed it, and the creature fell lifeless. The villain was in disbelief, realizing that a kid had defeated a creature meant to challenge All Might. As panic set in, he began to scratch at his neck, drawing blood. He attempted to reassure himself that they had not lost completely, but 𝐒𝐮, battered and bloodied, warned them to retreat while he still had control. The villain, driven by rage, lunged at 𝐒𝐮, but just then, a massive explosion erupted from the front doors, revealing All Might, who declared his presence with authority. They didn't have the strength to confront him at that moment. The urgency in the air was palpable as one of the heroes insisted they must retreat. Shigaraki agreed, and then a strange substance enveloped the two villains, causing them to disappear. A wave of relief washed over All Might as he turned to check on 𝐒𝐮's condition. Young 𝐒𝐮 appeared battered, as if they had fought in multiple wars. All Might's huge smile faded into a look of shock upon seeing the state they were in. 𝐒𝐮 reassured him that they were not dying, just exhausted, and suggested they would rest now. All Might, confused, was unable to process this before 𝐒𝐮 collapsed. He quickly scooped them up and rushed toward an ambulance. In 𝐒𝐮's mindscape, a portal opened, and a figure emerged, coughing and recalling the sensation of pain after so long. This person entered a small room filled with personal belongings and equipment, laying down on a bed to reflect. They contemplated the possibility of having harmed someone but reassured themselves that the individual was stronger than that. With a sigh, they resolved to speak with Lady Gabriel soon. After changing into night attire, the figure drifted off to sleep. In the real world, 𝐼/𝐵's absence after the attack left everyone worried. Izuku expressed his fear, while Toru excitedly recounted Todoroki's impressive feats against the villains. However, the mood shifted when they realized 𝐼/𝐵 was missing. Jiro and Momo felt a pang of guilt, fearing the worst. Izuku spotted a detective and approached him, asking if he had seen their classmate. The detective's somber expression hinted at troubling news. He informed the group that their teacher had passed out but would recover, while 𝐼/𝐵's condition was far more serious. The revelation that 𝐼/𝐵 had lost an arm and suffered significant injuries struck the class like a knife to the heart. Jiro and Momo began to cry, feeling they had abandoned 𝐼/𝐵, while the others processed the devastating news in silence. Izuku, overwhelmed with emotion, collapsed to the floor, crying. Ochako attempted to comfort him, but he felt guilty for not being able to help 𝐼/𝐵. Tsu reminded him that if he had intervened, both of them could have been in danger. Izuku's frustration boiled over as he expressed that 𝐼/𝐵 was someone who faced adversity with a smile and did not deserve this fate. He returned to crying on the floor, while a deflated All Might looked on, feeling ashamed. 𝐼/𝐵 lay in a hospital bed, connected to life support, with bruises and scars covering their body. The doctors were astonished that 𝐼/𝐵 was still alive given the extent of their injuries. Alongside Mr. Aizawa, 𝐼/𝐵 was one of the few from the attack who required serious medical attention, while others had escaped with minor injuries. The incident at 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐬 had shaken public confidence in the heroes, as many questioned their strength after a group of villains had nearly killed a student. 𝐼/𝐵 had been unconscious since the attack and 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐬 granted the class a few days off to recover, but the atmosphere remained tense due to concerns about 𝐼/𝐵's condition. Witnesses suggested that 𝐼/𝐵 might have been influenced by a villain during the attack, given their unusual behavior. In a hospital room, Aizawa was bandaged and recovering from his injuries. He was joined by All Might and Principal Nizu. Nizu inquired about a large, muscular villain, and Aizawa confirmed that 𝐼/𝐵 had come to his aid just in time. However, Nizu's expression turned serious when he revealed that the beast had been killed by 𝐼/𝐵. Aizawa was surprised but relieved, though he soon worried about the consequences for 𝐼/𝐵. All Might reassured him that 𝐼/𝐵 acted in self-defense, so there would be no punishment. However, All Might shared his concerns about 𝐼/𝐵's changed demeanor during the fight, noting that their voice had taken on a different tone and their eye color had shifted. Nizu speculated that a villain with mind control might have influenced 𝐼/𝐵, but he also believed there was more to 𝐼/𝐵's quirk than they knew. Aizawa listened intently as Nizu explained that 𝐼/𝐵 had occasionally seemed to talk to themselves. When Aizawa asked if they could speak to 𝐼/𝐵, Nizu and All Might exchanged sorrowful glances and confirmed that it was not possible. Aizawa recalled the last moments before he lost consciousness, realizing that 𝐼/𝐵 had sustained even more severe injuries than he had. All Might grimly detailed 𝐼/𝐵's condition, including the loss of an arm, broken ribs, and internal bleeding. Aizawa felt a wave of concern wash over him, questioning when 𝐼/𝐵 would awaken. All Might admitted it was difficult to say, and Nizu insisted they keep 𝐼/𝐵's condition confidential for now, hinting that there was more to uncover. All Might and Anomaly. 𝐼/𝐵 found themselves drifting in an endless void of darkness. They couldn't move, but it felt peaceful, silence, something they hadn't experienced in a while. Suddenly, they felt a pull toward something unknown. 𝐼/𝐵 thought to themselves that this was not good as they were drawn deeper into the void, the sensation akin to falling. Then, they found themselves standing still, having been startled into silence. Turning around, they recognized the figure before them. Gabriel introduced herself, expressing gratitude for their presence. She had brought 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 here for a specific reason. Curious, 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 inquired about that reason. Gabriel asked if they remembered anything from their battle against the villains, particularly anything unusual. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 hesitated, then recalled a moment of blackout when they felt something take control of them, describing it as being locked in the trunk of a car. Gabriel continued, asking if 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 knew the voice in their head. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 wondered if she meant Anna. Gabriel noted that Anna still hadn't revealed her name to 𝐒/𝐻𝐻. Confused, 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 questioned what that meant, thinking Anna was merely a program in their eye. Then, a voice interrupted, revealing itself as a woman with purple hair, draped in a cloak adorned with clouds. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 was confused and asked who the voice was. The voice replied that it was the one in their head. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 thought it was a computer program, but the voice claimed to be a good liar. Gabriel explained that the chip implanted in 𝐒/𝐻𝐻's eye was not what they thought. It was something entirely different. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 wanted to know what the voice was, and Gabriel revealed it was a spirit. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 stared in disbelief, questioning the existence of a spirit. Gabriel confirmed it was true, stating that the spirit was there to assist 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 in their endeavors. Gabriel also mentioned that they found lost souls who could not reach heaven, guiding them to their rightful place. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 was surprised to learn that heaven was real, and Gabriel confirmed the existence of various mythical heavens. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 was curious about the spirit situation and asked why she couldn't go to heaven. Gabriel suggested that the spirit explain herself. The woman turned to face them and introduced herself as Conan, not 𝐼𝐻𝐽. She explained her origins from a place filled with ninjas and gods, where she had been involved with both good and criminal intentions. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 inquired about her past, and Gabriel encouraged Conan to share her story. Conan revealed that she had been part of a terrorist group called the 𝐒𝐻𝐽𝐬 and was one of its founders. She had formed a close friendship with a man named Nagato, but after his death, she defected. Unfortunately, she was pursued by the new leader, 𝗂𝐴, leading to a confrontation that left her defeated. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 felt sympathy for Conan's tragic past but then realized something was wrong. They asked about their missing arm, and both Gabriel and Conan looked at 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 with sympathy. Gabriel explained that during a fight at USJ, 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 had been struck by a villain wielding a sword, resulting in the loss of their arm. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 panicked, fearing they could no longer be a hero or even fish. Gabriel reassured 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 that there was no need to worry. They mentioned that when 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 woke up, a gift would be sent to them. Suddenly, the area around 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 began to glow. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 was startled and questioned what was happening, but Gabriel calmed them, explaining that they were simply waking up. In an instant, 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 disappeared. Gabriel expressed confidence in 𝐒/𝐻𝐻's ability to understand their new role, but Conan voiced her concerns about placing such a heavy burden on a high school student. Gabriel reminded her of their boss's instructions and assured her that they would find the next individuals when the time was right. Conan reluctantly agreed to go to 𝐒/𝐻𝐻. Meanwhile, a doctor was checking on 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 while they remained asleep. Suddenly, the machines began beeping rapidly, causing the doctor to panic. A group of doctors rushed in to assess the situation, but the machines soon returned to normal. The doctor wondered if it had just been a malfunction. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 stirred, grumbling as they began to wake up. The doctor noticed 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 was waking and called for Nizu. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 felt the aftermath of the fight, experiencing pain in their ribs and the area where their arm used to be. They lamented the pain of fighting. Nizu approached and greeted 𝐒/𝐻𝐻, who asked how things were going. Nizu replied that aside from 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 and their teacher, everything was fine. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 felt a sharp pain where their arm had been and realized they could not grasp anything. Nizu expressed sympathy for 𝐒/𝐻𝐻's situation, explaining that the villain had struck while 𝐒/𝐻𝐻's back was turned. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 panicked, unsure of what had happened when Conan took over their body. They asked for clarification, mentioning they had blacked out during the fight. Nizu explained that it was expected, given that 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 had faced a large group of villains, including a massive creature known as a Nomu. 𝐒/𝐻𝐻 processed this information, surprised by the mention of the Nomu. Just then, All Might burst into the room, announcing his arrival, only to be reminded by 𝐻𝐻𝐻 to keep his voice down in the hospital. All Might approached 𝐒/𝑁, asking if they were all right. 𝐒/𝑁 pointed out their missing arm but reassured All Might that aside from that, they felt fine. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 informed 𝐒/𝑁 that their participation in the upcoming sports festival was up to them. 𝐒/𝑁 inquired about the sports festival, and 𝐻𝐻𝐻 explained it was the school's version of the Olympics, where students faced off in intense competitions. 𝐒/𝑁 realized their friend Izuku would be happy to see them recover, but before they could finish their thought, they began coughing violently. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 stood by, while All Might panicked, unsure of how to help. Once 𝐒/𝑁 stopped coughing, they noticed BLD on their hand and wondered what was happening. A woman in a doctor's robe and red glasses entered, stating that they needed to figure out the situation. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 welcomed the specialist doctor they had hired. 𝐶hisato introduced herself as 𝐒/𝑁's personal doctor, explaining that she would monitor 𝐒/𝑁 until they figured out what was wrong. 𝐒/𝑁 was confused about what that meant. 𝐶hisato revealed that an X-ray had shown something unusual near 𝐒/𝑁's lungs, and while they didn't know how to address it yet, she would observe 𝐒/𝑁 while he slept to gather more information. 𝐒/𝑁 was surprised to learn that he would not just be staying in the hospital but that 𝐶hisato would be living with him. 𝐻𝐻𝐻 smiled at the situation, while All Might expressed his astonishment at 𝐒/𝑁's luck. 𝐒/𝑁 couldn't believe how his life had taken such a turn. As they rode the train back to 𝐒/𝑁's houseboat, 𝐶hisato asked about his living situation. 𝐒/𝑁 was taken aback that she had no prior information about him. 𝐶hisato, curious, wanted to know if he lived in a small apartment or a big house. 𝐒/𝑁 felt a bit embarrassed, and Conan teased him about it. When they arrived at 𝐒/𝑁's home, 𝐶hisato was shocked at the living conditions. She expressed concern about the health risks of living so close to the water and noted that it wasn't good for a boy his age to be living alone. 𝐒/𝑁 invited her inside, playfully challenging her to change her mind about his living situation. He reached for his keys but momentarily forgot about his arm, which earned a sympathetic look from 𝐶hisato. Once inside, 𝐶hisato was surprised to find the place cleaner than she expected. She inquired about his food situation, and 𝐒/𝑁 admitted he usually waited until he got paid to buy groceries. 𝐶hisato was incredulous that he had been fishing alone in dangerous conditions to make a living. 𝐒/𝑁 shrugged, unsure how he had managed to survive. 𝐶hisato then explained that she would set up machines to monitor 𝐒/𝑁's body while he slept to understand the strange disease affecting him. 𝐒/𝑁 was less than thrilled about wearing them every night. Meanwhile, at school, Midoriya and the others were back in class, wondering about 𝐒/𝑁 and Aizawa's absence. Kirishima praised 𝐒/𝑁's bravery during a recent villain attack, while others expressed concern about their classmates. Aizawa returned, looking worse for wear, and informed them that 𝐒/𝑁 was in worse condition than he was, requiring a nurse's constant presence. Back at 𝐒/𝑁's houseboat, 𝐶hisato was sunbathing on the deck, enjoying the warmth. 𝐒/𝑁, feeling overwhelmed by recent events, retreated inside to lie down and reflect on everything that had happened over the past year. He questioned whether this was all a dream and worried about how he would cope without his arm. As tears formed in his eyes, he turned over and slowly drifted off to sleep. 𝐶hisato, meanwhile, enjoyed the sun, unaware of the attention she was drawing from fellow fishermen who admired her presence with 𝐒/𝑁. As the day ended, she headed inside to take a shower, calling out to 𝐒/𝑁. "How does the shower work?" There was no answer. 𝐶hisato walked slowly to your room, calling out your name with concern. When she opened the door, she found you curled up on your side, clutching your favorite shark plushie, tears staining your cheeks. A frown crossed 𝐶hisato's face as she felt a wave of remorse wash over her. It seemed the reality of what had happened had finally sunk in for you. She approached and gently placed some blankets over you, but before leaving, an idea struck her. She decided to take a shower first. Suddenly, a ghostly apparition of Conan emerged from your body, eager to explore her new surroundings. She floated around the room, observing the movies, video games, and blankets typical of a teenager's space. However, something strange caught her eye, a peculiar section of the wall. Intrigued, she floated closer. What she discovered was disheartening. It was a small room adorned with candles and photographs, 2 on each side representing your parents. The one in the center stood out, a picture of you with your parents, all smiles as you posed with a massive tuna, your small fist raised in triumph while your father snapped the photo. This sight saddened Conan deeply. Beneath a panel, she noticed a glint and opened it, revealing bottles of alcohol and, disturbingly, a pistol with a magazine nearby. Confusion filled her mind as she pondered why you had such items. Before she could contemplate further, she realized she could delve into your memories for answers. She returned to your body, entering a realm that resembled something out of a ghost story. Awakening in a dark void, she wandered through your memory bank, determined to uncover the truth. After what felt like hours, she found the memories you had tried to lock away. 4 years ago, she saw you in that same room, candles lit and a bottle of sake in hand, trembling. The ghost of Conan observed as you expressed your longing for your mother, reminiscing about how much everyone had grown. You laughed softly, recalling a movie she had mentioned, but your laughter quickly faded into sadness. It dawned on Conan that this was an anniversary of your parents' passing. You spoke of how nice it must be in heaven with your grandparents, but your tone shifted as you expressed feelings of shame and despair. You revealed the struggles you faced, from bullying at school to the pressure of providing for yourself. In a moment of desperation, you pulled something from your shirt, a loaded gun. Conan gasped, horrified as you brought it to your head, trembling. But then, in a moment of clarity, you slammed the gun down, exclaiming your frustration at feeling useless. Tears streamed down Conan's face as she witnessed your pain, realizing your mental state was far from stable even now. You placed the gun and alcohol away, hoping to forget them, and the memory faded into white, sending Conan back to her own realm. She looked down at you, tears falling as you clutched your plushie tightly, shivering slightly. Feeling remorseful, she whispered an apology, unaware that 𝐶hisato had just finished her shower and was now entering the room. 𝐶hisato wore pajama breathes and a BR as she carefully turned you onto your back to connect the machines. Satisfied with her work, she glanced at you, realizing you might just need someone by your side. Crawling into bed, she gently removed your arm from the plushie, but you instinctively reached out, seeking comfort. 𝐶hisato playfully remarked on your actions, but when she tried to move, you pulled her back with surprising strength. You murmured your fears of being alone, and 𝐶hisato recognized that you were likely trapped in a nightmare. She wrapped her arms around you, holding you close and stroking your hair, assuring you that she wouldn't leave. Gradually, you both settled down, drifting into a peaceful sleep. Meanwhile, Conan searched for something that would bring you joy. After a while, she found the perfect item, knowing it would make you happy. In the vastness of space, a soul floated through the infinite abyss. This soul, once the strongest in its world, was loved by many but also resented by others. It had succumbed to a sickness of the heart, yet its spirit remained unbroken. 𝐒𝐻𝐬, a warrior who never shied away from a fight, floated until a hand reached out, pulling him into the unknown. In another realm, a bright light enveloped the darkness, revealing a massive figure. Gabriel welcomed the newcomer, who instinctively went on guard, questioning where he was. Gabriel explained that he had saved him from an eternity of solitude and that this place was akin to an office. The figure, still wary, inquired about the events following his death, wanting to know how the war had ended and the fate of his sons. Gabriel explained that after the pirate known as Blackbeard and his crew had taken down the navy, he had claimed the devil fruit of the fallen, making him the first dual devil fruit user. The massive man gripped his weapon, his face contorted with rage as he shouted at the mention of Blackbeard's name. Gabriel continued, detailing how the Marines had pursued the pirates to the bay, nearly allowing none to escape, until red-haired Shanks arrived and halted the conflict, saving both the pirates and Straw Hat Luffy. The man reflected on Shanks' late arrival, acknowledging it was only natural for him to show up when the situation had escalated. Gabriel then mentioned that despite the Navy declaring victory, the situation had worsened, and he could see no further, apologizing for his inability to provide more information. The man, feeling a sense of relief knowing his son had escaped safely, was intrigued when Gabriel proposed something to him. Meanwhile, 𝐒/N began to wake as the morning sun streamed through the windows. The sounds of medical equipment echoed throughout the boat as they lingered in bed for a few more moments. However, as 𝐒/N attempted to rise, they felt a weight pressing down. Curiosity piqued, 𝐒/N turned to investigate but found themselves ensnared in a bear hug. A soft sound escaped the person holding them, prompting 𝐒/N to look over and see 𝐿𝐿 curled up next to them in her pajamas. Confused, 𝐒/N wondered how this had happened. Conan giggled softly, and 𝐒/N asked what was so amusing. She replied that it was nothing, but 𝐒/N insisted on getting up. When they tried to escape, 𝗟𝗧𝗧's grip tightened, making it difficult to break free. Their struggles inadvertently woke 𝗟𝗧𝗧, who greeted 𝐒/N with a cheerful morning. Startled, 𝐒/N exclaimed, fearing she might give them a heart attack. 𝗟𝗧𝗧 reassured them that she was there to help, not harm. 𝐒/N requested to be released to prepare breakfast, but 𝗟𝗧𝗧 playfully challenged them, questioning how they would manage with only one arm. After a moment of thought, 𝐒/N suggested tacos, to which 𝗟𝗧𝗧 reacted with disbelief, asking what they typically ate for breakfast. 𝐒/N admitted to eating whatever was available on board, leading 𝗟𝗧𝗧 to declare she would go to the store to ensure 𝐒/N ate healthily. 𝐒/N protested, claiming they did eat well, but 𝗟𝗧𝗧 countered with evidence from 𝐒/N's last meal, which had been pizza. Time passed, and 𝗟𝗧𝗧 had left, leaving 𝐒/N alone to watch a recording of an NFL game. 𝐒/N had always enjoyed American sports, even without having visited the country. As excitement built during the game, 𝐒/N cheered for their team, reveling in the fantasy points scored. Suddenly, Conan interrupted, expressing concern and suggesting that 𝐒/N should return to their base. 𝐒/N, sensing her nervousness, inquired about the trouble brewing. Conan insisted that 𝐒/N needed to leave immediately, but 𝐒/N argued that they couldn't even cast off with one arm. Just then, a knock at the door startled 𝐒/N, who froze in place, contemplating the potential danger outside. Conan urged 𝐒/N to open the door, but fear gripped them as they imagined various threats. Conan warned that if 𝐒/N didn't comply, she would take control of their body again. Reluctantly, 𝐒/N crept to the door and opened it just a crack, revealing a large package. Puzzled, 𝐒/N wondered if they had ordered something again. Conan clarified that it was a new arm, leaving 𝐒/N uncertain about the idea of a prosthetic. While it could restore their life, the thought of explaining it to others loomed large in their mind. Hesitantly, 𝐒/N brought the package inside, setting it on the table and staring at it. Conan encouraged 𝐒/N to open it, but 𝐒/N hesitated, concerned about the implications of having a prosthetic arm in a world that knew of their disability. After a sigh, 𝐒/N decided to open the box, surprised by what they found inside. 𝗂𝐵 was known as Whitebeard. Conan pointed out that he didn't actually have a beard, to which 𝗂𝐵 replied that he wasn't going to name himself White Mustache. A bright light suddenly appeared behind Conan, and 𝐒/N was ejected like a sunflower seed. 𝐒/N groaned, wondering what he had eaten. Conan greeted him, and he lazily responded. His gaze shifted to the towering figure behind Conan, and panic set in. He questioned whether the man was dangerous and if he should be afraid. 𝗂𝐵 reassured him that there was no need to panic, explaining that he had also died and had been brought there by another woman. 𝐒/N asked if there was anything he could do for 𝗂𝐵, who instructed him to attack. Confused, 𝐒/N hesitated until 𝗂𝐵 noticed his injured arm. 𝐒/N explained that he and his friends had been attacked during a training exercise, but they were all safe, albeit at the cost of his arm. 𝗂𝐵 seemed deep in thought. In a flashback, 𝗂𝐵 recalled how everyone was surprised that someone as strong as 𝐒/N had returned after losing an arm in East Blue. A man with red hair and a scar on his eye had mentioned sacrificing it for a new generation. The memory faded as 𝗂𝐵 returned to the present, revealing that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 reminded him of someone from his past. As 𝐒𝐮𝐬 began to glow again, he realized he was waking up. Conan explained that time worked differently there and that he had wanted to wake up. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 expressed his longing to know 𝗂𝐵's name, but before he could get an answer, he vanished. 𝗂𝐵 smiled, and Conan inquired if he was starting to like 𝐒𝐮𝐬. 𝗂𝐵 acknowledged that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 bore the traits of a true warrior and asked if there was anything else he should know. Conan pondered for a moment before revealing that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was sick. In another flashback, 𝗂𝐵 had confronted Sengoku, questioning whether he would allow something to happen. He had been struck by a sudden illness, and another man in a red suit had appeared, warning him that even he could not escape the threats of life. The memory ended, and Conan asked 𝗂𝐵 if he was all right. 𝗂𝐵 wanted to know how severe 𝐒𝐮𝐬's condition was, and Conan informed him it was just severe coughing for now. 𝗂𝐵 turned away, then suddenly a large room with his name on the door appeared. He dismissed it, and the next morning, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 woke up to the smell of bacon and eggs, realizing 𝗧𝗧𝗪 was cooking. He grumbled about being tired, and Conan teased him about staying up late. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 jokingly remarked that he didn't know she was his mother, to which Conan replied that she could be if he wanted. He got out of bed, dressed in a t-shirt, and walked into the kitchen, where he was greeted by 𝗧𝗧𝗪 in an apron. She had a warm smile, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 couldn't help but notice her beauty, feeling a blush creeping onto his face. He playfully challenged her about her role as a doctor, but she approached him with a teasing demeanor, pinning him against the fridge. Conan, witnessing the scene, reacted dramatically, while 𝐒𝐮𝐬 questioned what was happening. 𝗧𝗧𝗪, with a mischievous grin, teased him about being alone for too long and hinted at his interests. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, flustered, asked her not to bring up such topics so early in the morning, but she playfully insisted. As she walked down the hallway with a wink, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was left bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. After the morning's chaos, 𝗧𝗧𝗪 mentioned she had to go to the hospital for a few hours, leaving 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to put his arm back on. Conan complained about boredom, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 pointed out that she lived in his head. She suggested they go to the base, reminding him it was the reason they were there. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 sighed but agreed. After a journey that felt like a wild adventure, they finally arrived back at the base, noticing increased defenses around. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 drove to his large office, feeling like the president of a third-world country. Conan commented on his lack of enthusiasm, and just then his secretary burst in with a tablet, announcing there was something he might want to see. 𝐒𝐮𝐬, startled, fell off his chair, questioning who she was. The secretary introduced herself as Mrs. Omura and handed him the tablet filled with information. It turns out, a few miles deep in Japan, there was a large villain hideout filled with notorious villains. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 wondered what this was about, while Omura suggested it could be a possible assignment for them to make a name for themselves. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 questioned whether they even had a name, and Omura hesitated, leading 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to sigh and leave it to the readers. A holographic pad appeared, prompting 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to select who would go, but an error message indicated that 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was required. Confused, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 asked why they had to be involved, given the need to stay hidden from the public. Omura assured 𝐒𝐮𝐬 it was no problem and suggested they just shout. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 hesitantly whispered a word in Russian, and suddenly, they were enveloped in a yellow light and strange particles as their outfit transformed. They now wore black boots, black breathes, a white button-up shirt under a black vest blazer, and a large black coat with a red leather interior featuring the Jolly Roger insignia on the back. A metal mask adorned 𝐒𝐮�'s face, reminiscent of the Winter Soldier, along with dark makeup around their eyes. A sword with a large hand protector hung at their waist, infused with a special power, and they topped off the look with a tri-fold pirate hat. 𝐒𝐮 looked at their reflection and remarked that they looked like a goth kid and Jack Sparrow had a baby. 𝗂𝐵 commented that he liked the look, while Conan struggled to find the right words to describe it. 𝐒𝐮 joked about looking like a school shooter, but Conan corrected them, saying they looked more like a cosplayer. 𝐒𝐮 grimaced at the thought. Just then, a message indicated that the requirements were met, and they were being teleported to a nearby position. Omura wished 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 good luck, but before 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 could respond, they vanished. Omura then walked toward a massive window overlooking the harbor, expressing her excitement about being sent there and how much fun she would have. After a time skip, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 found themselves in a forest, having fallen from the sky. They groaned, wishing they could have landed closer to the ground. A voice called out, asking if it was 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. Startled, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 looked around and saw a soldier in a World War II-style uniform with the Jolly Roger on his arm. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 learned that the soldier's name was Sergeant Turner, and he led 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 through the dense forest to a large group of soldiers and Sherman Firefly tanks. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 noted that they had brought the big guns. Turner guided 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 to a lookout post where they had been monitoring the villain's stronghold, which was well armed with soldiers carrying rifles and machine guns, as well as an old-era Japanese tank. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 assessed the situation and noted that it didn't look too bad, but Turner pointed out a group of police and pro-heroes on a hilltop observing the same stronghold. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 sighed, realizing this made things complicated. Turner suggested suspending the mission, but 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 remembered their goal was to draw attention. They decided to proceed with the plan. Conan remarked on 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽's assertiveness, and 𝗂𝐵 added that it was impressive since it wasn't typically 𝐒𝐮𝐽's style. Both 𝐒𝐮𝐽 and Conan became flustered at the comment, insisting they not discuss it. In a police perspective, an officer sighed, expressing frustration at the wait for the rest of the pro-heroes. Another officer mentioned that All Might was supposed to arrive after his school day, and they were concerned about the situation. Just then, good news arrived that All Might had gotten out early and was on his way with news crews. Unbeknownst to them, 𝐒𝐮𝐽's troops, numbering around 407 Firefly tanks, were preparing for the attack. The tanks were positioned strategically, with snipers ready to engage. Turner communicated with the squads, confirming their positions. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 found humor in a tank commander's radio call, appreciating the name given to their unit. Turner provided 𝐒𝐮𝐽 with intel on the villain leader, detailing illegal activities and a penchant for causing chaos. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 decided they wanted the leader alive, as they had no intention of bombing the place. Turner relayed this information to the troops while 𝐒𝐮𝐽 continued to observe the heroes and police. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 noticed that the heroes were waiting for someone, and soon after, a group of cars arrived, including one with All Might. 𝐒𝐮𝐽 hoped he wouldn't interfere. The police and heroes were relieved at All Might's arrival, and he inquired about the situation. The police informed him about the villain group known as Black Spider, who had about 200 members inside their hideout. All Might expressed confidence that it wouldn't be too problematic. As All Might engaged with the news crew, 𝐒𝐮𝐽 seized the opportunity to give the order to attack. The chaos erupted as 𝐒𝐮𝐽's forces charged, tanks firing from above and creating mayhem inside the villain complex. Villains were caught off guard, and 𝐒𝐮𝐽's troops advanced without losing a single man. The villain leader, now panicking, realized they were under attack. He expressed frustration at his subordinates, who were unable to stop 𝐒𝐮�'s forces. In a fit of rage, he slammed his hand on the desk, preparing to retaliate against the unexpected assault. Turner and his team were searching for the boss's room when they heard a series of loud thuds and thumps. One soldier remarked on the unusual noise, suggesting it sounded like someone was having a good time. Turner dismissed the idea, humorously suggesting it was probably the boss, unless the boss was involved with someone close to the soldier. The soldiers laughed at the comment. Suddenly, a muscular man in a suit flew through the corridor, seemingly ignoring them. Turner quickly radioed in, alerting that a hostile leader was heading outside. 𝐒𝐮, feeling bored, decided it was time to meet this boss. Just then, the boss burst out of the facility, demanding to know where his opponent was and challenging them to a fight. 𝐒𝐮 calmly responded, telling him to relax. The boss, now furious, recognized 𝐒𝐮 as the one he was looking for and questioned their confidence in confronting him. 𝐒𝐮 affirmed their intent, and the boss unleashed his quirk, summoning a massive amount of wood around him and launching it at 𝐼/N. However, 𝐼/N's eyes glowed red, and with swift movements, they cut through the wood with their sword. The boss was taken aback, and 𝐼/N seized the opportunity to deliver a powerful roundhouse kick to his jaw, following up with a flurry of punches. 𝐼/N taunted the boss, asking if he still wanted to play tough. The boss, flustered, cursed back at 𝐼/N, who took it as a confirmation of the challenge. Meanwhile, Turner's soldiers quickly dealt with the remaining villains, leaving the area calm. 𝐼/N expressed their disbelief at the villains' foolish goals of eradicating heroes. The boss argued that society had become blind to the arrogance of heroes and the unfair treatment of those with less desirable quirks. 𝐼/N listened, reflecting on their own experiences of being treated poorly when diagnosed as Quirkless, alongside Izuku. Unbeknownst to them, a news crew and All Might were observing from the nearby forest. The news reporter criticized the boss's views, insisting that heroes were essential for society's safety. All Might, however, understood the truth behind the boss's words, having witnessed the darker side of heroism himself. 𝐼/N acknowledged the boss's point but insisted that acts of violence and crime could not be overlooked. As they unsheathed their sword, crackling with energy, the boss attempted to bribe 𝐼/N with offers of money and other temptations. 𝐼/N, angered by the suggestion that women could be treated as commodities, declared their disgust and prepared to strike. With a powerful swing of their sword, a crimson wave surged forward, cutting through the boss and destroying the compound. After sheathing their sword, 𝐼/N turned to their team, declaring the mission a success and suggesting they head home. Suddenly, a booming voice interrupted them. It was All Might, who expressed gratitude for dealing with the villains but insisted that vigilante actions could not be tolerated. 𝐼/N, unfazed, clarified that they were not vigilantes but part of an organization. All Might insisted that their actions were against the law, to which 𝐼/N retorted that they had eliminated a significant threat in a matter of minutes, effectively doing All Might's job for him. All Might, taken aback by 𝐼/N's boldness, urged them to take the situation seriously. He lunged forward with a powerful punch, but 𝐼/N effortlessly blocked it with a glowing finger. 𝐼/N asserted their seriousness and swiftly threw All Might into the forest, their coat billowing behind them as the news crew captured the moment live. 𝐼/N commanded their soldiers to return to base, and they vanished into the forest, leaving a confused All Might and a stunned camera crew behind. Later, 𝐼/N returned to their base, where they were greeted by Omura, who inquired about the mission's success. 𝐼/N confirmed it was indeed a thrilling experience. Omura showed them footage of their confrontation, highlighting their impressive display against the boss and All Might. 𝗟𝗶 commented on the familiarity of the scene, while Conan praised 𝐼/N for their performance. 𝐼/N then realized they were late returning home, recalling that Chisato had mentioned she would be back around 2 p.m., and it was now 3:30 p.m. Meanwhile, Chisato was at a bar, watching the news. The bartender asked if she wanted another drink, and she agreed. Suddenly, the news interrupted with a special report, showing footage of 𝐼/N and their team taking down the villains. Chisato was intrigued, noting that 𝐼/N seemed familiar. The report stated that officials had categorized 𝐼/N's group as neither villains nor vigilantes, but as something entirely new. Back at the base, 𝐼/N rushed to their boat, hoping to avoid trouble. As they hurried, Conan reminded them to keep it down, while 𝐼/N expressed frustration at the urgency of the situation. 𝗟𝗶 pointed out that the predicament was primarily 𝐼/N's responsibility. "You are going to get in trouble, not us. Nobody knows about us." 𝐼/N grumbled as Conan suggested some music. "She then left your mindscape and appeared next to you, startling you and causing you to fall." 𝐼/N exclaimed in surprise at her sudden appearance. Conan casually mentioned that she had been able to do that for about a month and encouraged you to hurry, as Chisato would be home soon. You responded with a gesture of frustration, telling her to let you drive. 𝗟𝗶 commented on the speed of the vehicle, and you let out a series of incoherent sounds in response. After a while, You finally made it back home after enduring the constant nagging from the two spirits in your head. You quickly parked and rushed inside to make it look like you had been there all day. Searching for the TV remote, you flailed around until you accidentally clicked something, causing you to jump onto your bed and pretend to be asleep just as 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 arrived home. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 called out for you, and you pretended to wake up with a groan. She asked if you were just waking up, to which you replied that you had been taking a nap. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 then requested to talk to you about something, and you reluctantly agreed. You walked to the living room and asked her how her day went. She mentioned it went well and asked what you had done. You replied that you had cleaned up and relaxed, but Conan chimed in, criticizing your lack of interesting activities. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 pressed you for more details, and you felt the pressure as she stared into your eyes. After a moment, she let it go, and you sighed in relief. However, she then asked you to put your arms to your sides, and you realized too late what that meant. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 noticed your metal arm and inquired about it. You stumbled through an explanation, admitting it was made of metal, while Conan and 𝗂𝐵 reacted with disbelief. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 confronted you about your identity, connecting you to a recent incident involving a powerful figure. You froze, unsure of how to respond. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 revealed that she was watching over you, and you realized that the person who sent her was someone significant. She explained that they couldn't let you die, and you expressed confusion about the rules governing your situation. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 acknowledged that things were complicated but reassured you. As the night wore on, you all settled down and it was now 9 p.m. You felt exhausted, especially with the sports festival approaching. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 mentioned she would accompany you, just in case you had another episode. You reluctantly agreed. In your mindscape, you were surprised to find yourself there again, where Conan and 𝗂𝐵 were waiting with workout equipment. Conan reminded you that just because you were strong didn't mean you shouldn't strive to get stronger. You protested that you needed rest, but they insisted you were in your mind, and your physical body wouldn't tire. They prepared to train you, and you braced yourself for what was to come. The next morning, 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 woke up and noticed you still asleep. She gently shook you awake, and you shot up, startled and horrified, recalling your training with the spirits. Conan dismissed your fears, claiming they had only given you a light workout. You expressed your frustration, but 𝗂𝐵 pointed out that it was a good thing it wasn't real life. After getting ready, you and 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 had breakfast before heading out. She suggested taking the train to school, but Conan interrupted, telling you to go to the parking lot instead. Confused, you followed her instructions and found an impressive car waiting for you. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 remarked on how spoiled you were, and you countered by pointing out her profession. As you prepared for the day ahead, Izuku, your teacher, was struggling to manage the chaos of his class. He ordered everyone to change into their uniforms and wait outside. Once the room fell silent, he reflected on the peace he had before the day began. He received a message about your progress and was shocked to learn that you had fought off multiple villains despite being quirkless. He pondered what you had accomplished, feeling a mix of concern and curiosity. Suddenly, the sound of tires screeching filled the air as you arrived at you. In your new vehicle, ready to face whatever challenges awaited you. Too much gas filled the air as 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 questioned whether someone had been dishonest. 𝐒𝐮 hoped that wasn't the case. Whitebeard expressed his enjoyment of the situation, while 𝐒𝐮 spotted a parking spot and quickly claimed it, leaving an irate parent behind. Entering the festival, 𝐒𝐮 marveled at the vibrant atmosphere, filled with stalls and throngs of people, reminiscent of Disneyland. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐿 mentioned she needed to meet with the teachers and encouraged 𝐒𝐮 to explore. As 𝐒𝐮 wandered through the festival, observing families enjoying their time together, a pang of jealousy and sadness struck. Suddenly, Conan interrupted 𝐒𝐮's thoughts, asking if everything was all right. 𝐒𝐮 assured her they were fine, though she sensed otherwise. Continuing to explore, 𝐒𝐮 stumbled upon a candy booth and was taken aback by the price of a caramel apple. After reluctantly paying, 𝐒𝐮 was approached by the pro-hero 𝗂𝐿, who expressed her longing for 2 apples, playfully attempting to charm the vendor for a discount. 𝐒𝐮 couldn't help but comment on the situation, noting that the vendor's pricing was unfair. 𝗂𝐿 and Quirkless exchanged words about the vendor's treatment of heroes. while 𝐒𝐮𝐷 defended their stance, clarifying their age. The conversation turned lighthearted as 𝗏𝐷 complimented 𝐒/𝐿's name, and they shared a brief exchange before she moved on, leaving 𝐾𝐮𝐬 to apologize for her behavior. As time passed, an announcement called for all first-year students to gather in the designated area. 𝐒/𝐿 donned a mask and hoodie, blending into the crowd of classmates. Present Mick's voice boomed as he welcomed everyone to the 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐦𝐚 Sports Festival, introducing Class 1A. 𝐒/𝐿 took the opportunity to surprise everyone by jumping onto the stage, wearing a cat mask. Confusion spread among the classmates as they wondered about 𝐒/𝐿's sudden appearance. 𝐒/𝐿, feeling the pressure of the moment, attempted to maintain composure but was met with loud cheers and excitement from Class 1A. After a brief moment of chaos, 𝐒/𝐿 realized they had forgotten their purpose on stage and turned to Midnight for guidance. Midnight reminded 𝐒/𝐿 of the opening ceremony speech, prompting 𝐒/𝐿 to grab the microphone and test it. The audience eagerly awaited what 𝐒/𝐿 would say, especially after their experiences during the USJ incident. However, 𝐒/𝐿's exhaustion took over, leading to an unexpected nap right there on stage. The audience gasped in disbelief, and Midnight rushed over, concerned about 𝐒/𝐿's well-being. As 𝐒/𝐿 stirred awake, the crowd erupted in laughter, and Present Mike commented on the unusual situation. Midnight, amused by 𝐒/𝐿's carefree nature, leaned closer, causing a mix of reactions from those watching. 𝐒/𝐿 felt a rush of confusion but was caught off guard by Midnight's playful demeanor, leaving the moment hanging in the air. Midnight felt a sudden jolt as 𝐒/𝐿 playfully blew in her ear, causing her to react with surprise. She playfully scolded him for being cheeky, and he, slightly blushing, remarked that he never indicated a preference for being touched by older women. Midnight teased him, suggesting that his expression told a different story. 𝐒/𝐿 insisted he enjoyed it but urged her to calm down. Midnight, with a playful smirk, grabbed her 𝗏𝗶𝐸 and playfully swung it in front of him, calling him naughty. In response, 𝐒/𝐿 seized a microphone and swung it around, declaring he wouldn't fall for her 𝗧𝗱𝗧𝗟𝗓. The crowd, witnessing the unusual standoff between 𝐒/𝐿 and the pro hero, was left bewildered. Present Mike, noticing the distraction, called for the show to continue, startling both 𝐒/𝐿 and Midnight, who had momentarily forgotten their surroundings. 𝐒/𝐿, embarrassed, stormed off the stage, leaving a sarcastic comment about his first impression. As the race began, all participants lined up in a tunnel, waiting for the signal. 𝐒/𝐿, feeling skeptical about the race, expressed his disbelief at the situation. With the countdown complete, a wall of ice suddenly appeared, and Todoroki glided effortlessly on it. Other students voiced their frustration at his advantage, while 𝐒/𝐿, smirking, declared the game was on and magically donned a pair of ice skates, skating on Todoroki's ice. Conan, surprised, questioned 𝐒/𝐿's skating ability, to which 𝐒/𝐿 admitted he couldn't skate at all, attributing his success to luck. Meanwhile, Izuku was focused on keeping pace with 𝐒/𝐿, Bakugo, and Todoroki, determined to win. Present Mike announced the chaos unfolding as 𝐒/𝐿 lost control on the ice, causing Izuku to sweat nervously while trying to catch up. 𝐒/𝐿 finally escaped the ice, only to step on a hidden mine, which propelled him forward unexpectedly. Bakugo, feeling confident in his lead, was caught off guard when Izuku flew past him at the finish line, claiming first place. 𝐒/𝐿, in a comical twist, crashed into Bakugo, creating a chaotic scene that left both of them groaning. As they picked themselves up, Izuku checked on them, while 𝐒/𝐿 humorously claimed to have injured himself. The two then watched as other participants crossed the finish line, including Momo, who was accompanied by Mineta. 𝐒/𝐿 greeted Mineta, who received a playful knock on the head for his antics. Momo expressed her gratitude to 𝐒/𝐿 for his earlier support and brought up the incident at USJ, apologizing for it. 𝐒/𝐿 reassured her that he was fine and then addressed a rumor about his past encounter with villains. When Momo inquired about his feelings regarding his actions, 𝐒/𝐿 candidly stated he felt no remorse, explaining that in self-defense situations, one must act decisively. Momo pondered his perspective, questioning the hero's ideology of justice. 𝐼/N elaborated on the harsh realities of villain rehabilitation, citing statistics about escape rates from prison. Momo listened intently, her expression shifting as she absorbed his words. When she pointed out his cybernetic arm, 𝐼/N smiled and promised she would find out more soon. As the race concluded, Midnight announced the top 30 participants moving on to the next round, which would involve a cavalry battle. 𝐼/N, realizing the challenge of teamwork, jokingly teased Izuku about his predicament. The atmosphere shifted as the cavalry battle commenced, with 𝐼/N enthusiastically embracing Tokoyami, who appeared uncomfortable with the sudden affection. Midnight announced a series of party games before the fights began, and 𝐼/N, searching for a scarf as part of the game, expressed his frustration at not finding one. As he wandered the stadium, he finally spotted Aizawa, sighing at the realization that he would have to approach him for the scarf. "What do you need, 𝐼/N?" 𝐼/N needed Aizawa's scarf for a scavenger hunt, promising to return it afterward. Aizawa stared at 𝐼/N for a moment, as if assessing their sincerity. Eventually he relented, instructing 𝐼/N to bring it back promptly. 𝐼/N accepted the scarf and headed back into the arena, joking about it being like Aizawa's childhood blanket. As 𝐼/N walked, they suddenly found themselves ensnared in vines. A girl with vine-like hair appeared, introducing herself as 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸 from Class 1B and presenting a card that read, "Charming Idiot." 𝐼/N sulked, acknowledging the accuracy of the description. 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸 apologized and led 𝐼/N to the center of the arena, where they were wrapped in vines, holding Aizawa's scarf. 𝐼/N found the situation surprisingly comfortable, but 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸, noticing 𝐼/N had fallen asleep, expressed her disbelief. Conan remarked on 𝐼/N's tendency to doze off, while Midnight, who was checking cards, approached them. After inspecting 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸's card, she requested 𝐼/N be released from the vines. As 𝐒𝐮𝐲𝐸 complied, 𝐼/N fell forward, startled and confused, wondering if something was amiss. Midnight, slightly annoyed, pointed out the scarf and instructed 𝐼/N to return it to Aizawa. After a brief interlude, the duels began. The first match featured Tokoyami from Class 1A against Mina Ishido, with the crowd cheering enthusiastically. 𝐼/N chatted with Izuku, but quickly dozed off again. The match concluded swiftly, with Tokoyami's dark shadow knocking Mina out of the arena. Mina felt defeated, but her classmates tried to lift her spirits. The next match was announced, featuring Monoma from Class 1B against 𝐼/N, who had gained notoriety for taking down 20 villains alone. The crowd erupted in cheers as 𝐼/N stepped onto the platform, observing Monoma on the opposite side. 𝐼/N's internal stats displayed their strength, speed, and durability, while Monoma boasted about his quirk, which allowed him to copy others temporarily. Monoma taunted 𝐼/N, questioning their absence from class and attire. 𝐼/N, unfazed, remarked that they couldn't understand him, which only aggravated Monoma further. Midnight confirmed both contestants were ready, and the match began. Monoma charged at 𝐼/N, but 𝐼/N stood their ground, knowing Monoma lacked true strength without a quirk. Instead of attacking, Monoma touched 𝐼/N's face, claiming victory, but nothing happened. Confusion spread among the audience, especially the Class 1A students. Lita pointed out the oddity of Monoma not being able to activate 𝐼/N's quirk, while Bakugo boasted about his own. Monoma's frustration grew, prompting 𝐼/N to step forward and explain the activation process. After a moment of hesitation, Monoma agreed to follow 𝐼/N's instructions. 𝐼/N prepared a powerful punch and struck Monoma squarely in the chest, sending him crashing into the out-of-bounds wall. The crowd fell silent, shocked by the swift outcome. 𝐼/N, surprised by their own strength, marveled at the impact. As Monoma groaned on the ground, Midnight declared 𝐼/N the winner, and the crowd erupted in cheers. 𝐼/N approached Monoma, apologizing for the force of the punch and acknowledging their tendency to forget their own strength. Monoma, wide-eyed and terrified, sought refuge behind a medic, leaving 𝐼/N to reflect on the surprising turn of events. You were walking back to your observation room when you sensed a presence behind you. You called out, but there was no response. Feeling a bit frustrated, you sighed and continued on your way. Suddenly, the number 2 hero, 𝗟𝗏𝐿, stepped out from his observation room. He remarked to himself that a certain boy might be the one to encourage 𝗟𝗱𝐿 before returning to his room. As you entered the observation booth, the next fight began. Mina, who had been in a sad trance, suddenly snapped back to attention and energetically questioned you about your recent performance. She exclaimed in disbelief that you had taken out your opponent with a punch and wanted to know how you did it. You replied that if she would stop shaking you, you might tell her. Momo chimed in, urging Mina to calm down, while Lita insisted that you should be allowed to speak. After Mina released you, you held your head, claiming that you felt like you had whiplash. She continued to press you for details about your newfound strength, and Momo echoed her surprise, noting that you didn't look like someone capable of delivering such a powerful punch. You pointed out that you trained every day, even before applying to you. Meanwhile, Tokoyami was deep in thought about the fight. He asked his shadow, Dark Shadow, whether your punches had been that powerful during the training exercise. Dark Shadow admitted they hurt but suggested you might have been holding back. Tokoyami's sweat dropped at his companion's antics. Lita then asked about your arm, pointing to the metallic one concealed under your hoodie, and 𝗟𝗱𝐿 questioned why you were in regular clothes while everyone else wore gym attire. You panicked and explained that you had been late and didn't have time to change, assuring them that Aizawa had given you permission. Just as the questions about your arm intensified, Mike announced the next match, diverting everyone's attention. You breathed a sigh of relief, grateful for the distraction. As you observed the fight, you noticed Izuku standing across from a boy who resembled Aizawa. They exchanged a few words before Izuku suddenly tensed and began to walk away. Ojiro shouted in alarm, warning that the boy had a brainwashing quirk that could take control of anyone who spoke to him. You frowned at the implication that just because something was heroic didn't mean it was right. In a last-ditch effort, Izuku managed to regain control just before he walked off, quickly rushing at 𝗪𝐿 and knocking him out of bounds. Midnight declared Izuku the winner, and the crowd erupted in cheers. As the first round fights continued, you grew bored and decided to grab some food at the festival, unknowingly passing by 𝗟𝗏𝐿, who observed you leave the area. You wandered among the stalls and spotted a 𝗟𝗏𝐷 booth, but the price made you gasp. Just as you were about to give up, you felt money in your pocket. 300 yen had magically appeared. You bought the 𝗟𝗏𝐷, but a group of kids recognized you, causing unwanted attention. Just as you were feeling overwhelmed, the lady appeared, commanding the crowd to give you space and skirting you back to the arena. She asked what you were doing outside, mentioning that students weren't supposed to leave. You sheepishly admitted you hadn't realized. She complimented your performance in the fight, and you explained that you had been sick for a few weeks, which made you forget about the rules. As she walked you back, she clung to your arm, which you didn't mind since you were still focused on your food. Curious about your parents, she asked if they were watching from home. You hesitated, not wanting to reveal your loss, and replied that they couldn't make it. She expressed her sympathy and continued walking you back to your area. When you entered the booth, Momo noticed you with 𝗟𝗏𝐿 and was taken aback. Mineta, filled with jealousy, yelled at you, claiming you had gotten too close to 𝗟𝗏𝐿 before he could. Sue quickly silenced him. 𝗟𝗏𝐿 explained that she had found you surrounded by spectators and couldn't just leave you there. You clarified that you hadn't asked for her help, you just wanted to eat. Lita reminded you that food was provided, but you insisted you needed something more substantial than granola bars. As 𝗟𝗏𝐿 waved goodbye, you returned to the booth, noticing the rankings displayed. The first round had concluded, and you were set to face Todoroki in the quarterfinals. 𝐼/N walked out of the room and into the tunnel, where everyone was cheering for them. Mike announced the upcoming match, stating it would be an exciting fight between 𝐼/N/L/N and Shoto Todoroki. 𝐼/N stepped onto the platform, appearing relaxed, while Todoroki glared intensely, his hands at his sides. 𝐼/N wondered if Todoroki was okay. 𝗂𝐵 expressed excitement, sensing that Todoroki would put up a good fight. Midnight prepared the competitors, signaling the start of the match. Meanwhile, about 20 minutes away, two heroines watched the sports festival on a television. One wore a mask covering half her face, while the other had dark skin and large bunny-like ears. One heroine remarked that 𝐒𝐮𝐲 was up again, and the other's ears perked up in interest. The first heroine expressed her boredom with the previous fights, while the second pointed out that 𝐒𝐮𝐲's quirk was simply labeled as a strength enhancer. Rumi, the first heroine, insisted that 𝐒𝐮𝐲's abilities were purely muscle, suggesting that the school might be hiding the truth about him. Rumi kicked the floor in amusement, and Ryukaku, the second heroine, speculated if 𝐒𝐮 could be the first student taken under Rumi's wing during agency week. Rumi grinned, eager to see how the match would unfold. Back in the arena, Todoroki unleashed a barrage of ice at 𝐒𝐮, who skillfully dodged left and right. WB reminded 𝐒𝐮 that they could do more than just evade. 𝐒𝐮, focused on analyzing Todoroki's fighting style, noted that Todoroki was using ice but seemed reluctant to tap into something more. 𝐒𝐮 speculated that it might be a burdensome power. Tired of dodging, 𝐒𝐮 leaped over one of Todoroki's attacks, performing a gymnastics move and landing behind him. Todoroki, taken by surprise, turned around, and 𝐒𝐮 playfully waved their hand, teasing that it was magic. Frustrated, Todoroki attempted to punch 𝐒𝐮, but the impact caused him to groan in pain, possibly injuring his hand. 𝐒𝐮 leaned in close, whispering that they knew he was hiding something he didn't want to use. Todoroki, growing angrier, trapped 𝐒𝐮's other arm in ice. The crowd erupted in excitement, believing Todoroki had the upper hand, and began exchanging bets. Midnight called out to 𝐒𝐮, asking if they could move. 𝐒𝐮 waved their free arm in the air, confirming they were not incapacitated. With a sudden burst of strength, 𝐒𝐮 freed their arm from the ice and quickly moved behind Todoroki again, leaving the audience in shock. 𝐒𝐮 leaned in close to Todoroki's ear, urging him to use his left side. Todoroki scoffed, expressing his refusal to accept his father's power, declaring it a disgrace. As Todoroki unleashed another wave of ice, 𝐒𝐮 noticed his body beginning to freeze, indicating a serious struggle within him. W observed that Todoroki was reluctant to use his power out of fear. 𝐒𝐮 approached Todoroki, encouraging him to embrace his abilities, reminding him that the power flowed through him regardless of its origin. For a moment, Todoroki seemed to process 𝐒𝐮's words, and then his left side ignited in flames as he declared he would fight with all of himself. 𝗟𝗏𝐻, the number 2 hero and Todoroki's father, cheered from the audience, expressing pride in his son's acceptance of who he was. 𝐒𝐮, feeling slightly annoyed, acknowledged 𝗟𝗏𝐻's enthusiasm. Todoroki, fueled by his father's words, launched a fire attack toward 𝐒𝐮, which was less accurate than his ice. 𝐒𝐮 taunted Todoroki, claiming he couldn't hit anything, and Todoroki challenged 𝐒𝐮 to stop running away. This time, Todoroki combined his fire and ice into a single attack aimed directly at 𝐒𝐮. The flames struck 𝐒𝐮, causing significant pain and leaving burns on their skin. 𝐒𝐮 dropped to the ground, trying to shield themselves from the flames. As the attack subsided, the crowd fell silent, shocked to see 𝐒𝐮 on the floor, visibly hurt. Midnight panicked and called for paramedics, but 𝐒𝐮 quickly sat up, stretching their body and playfully exclaiming how hot it was. Despite the pain, 𝐒𝐮 realized their arm hurt significantly. Clutching their injured arm, they noticed their jacket was in tatters, and their skin felt strange. Determined, 𝐒𝐮 ripped off the remaining sleeve, revealing a metallic arm. The audience gasped in surprise, and Todoroki stared in disbelief. 𝐒𝐮 playfully accused Todoroki of hitting a kid with a prosthetic, feigning hurt. Before Todoroki could react, 𝐒𝐮 charged at him, placing their right arm on his shoulder while delivering rapid punches to his stomach with the metallic arm. After a flurry of strikes, Todoroki doubled over, coughing and struggling to regain his composure. 𝐒𝐮, slightly amused, remarked on how the others had let their guard down, questioning if Todoroki could continue. Todoroki glared at Y/N, but as he attempted to stand, the pain in his core prevented him from rising. He fell back down, his head lowered in frustration. Todoroki expressed his discontent, and Midnight, having regained her composure, called the match. The crowd erupted in cheers as they lifted Todoroki, and you offered an apology, but he didn't meet your gaze. You remarked that he seemed overly negative, while Conan pointed out that you had embarrassed him in front of the entire country, suggesting he was more upset than you realized. You scoffed and turned away, but then the pain from your burns hit you all at once, causing you to exclaim in distress. Medics quickly arrived to carry you to the infirmary, which happened to be right next to Todoroki's bed. Recovery Girl entered and began healing both of you, and soon you were lying there wrapped in bandages. She commented on how the younger generation seemed to get hurt in the strangest ways and questioned how you had lost your arm. You explained that it was a replacement, and when asked how you acquired it, you playfully responded that you had some money. Recovery Girl sighed and left the room, leaving you alone with your thoughts, feeling quite bored. Suddenly, a notification chimed, announcing your placement in the tournament and detailing your rewards, including a new commander for your navy and army. You smiled slightly, pleased that Todoroki was in the room with you, not wanting him to think you were too eccentric. Todoroki then asked about your quirk, curious about how it worked since it wasn't apparent. You faced a dilemma, realizing you had a choice to make about revealing the truth. Ultimately, you decided to be honest with him, admitting that you didn't actually have a quirk. His disbelief was palpable as he processed your words, and you explained that you had been lying on your paperwork. Todoroki was astonished to learn that you had defeated him using sheer strength, prompting you to share your experience of hauling heavy tuna every week as part of your training. Just as he was about to ask more questions, the fight between Izuku and Bakugo began, and you hoped for Izuku's victory. After some time, it was your turn to face Bakugo. Thankfully, no one approached you during the wait, as you preferred to keep to yourself. As you walked through the tunnel to enter the stadium, you expected the crowd to be wild, but they seemed to doubt your ability to fight due to your injuries. Bakugo was already out there, visibly irritated. Midnight announced that if you didn't appear in 5 minutes, Bakugo would be declared the winner, prompting boos from the audience. You were frustrated by the implication that you couldn't continue. A staff member approached to check on you, and after confirming you were okay to proceed, you handed him a tape to play when you entered. A few minutes later, Midnight received a message and, after a moment of uncertainty, announced that you would continue. The crowd roared back to life as the speakers began playing a song, and the stadium lights flickered. You skipped out of the tunnel, waving your arms and enjoying the moment, even if some found it excessive. As you danced in front of Bakugo, he glared at you, creating small explosions in his hands in an attempt to intimidate you. You took your position on the platform, ready for the fight to begin. Midnight called for the contestants to get ready, and Bakugo prepared to launch himself at you, while you simply crossed your arms, smiling at his overconfidence. As the match began, elsewhere, Halsey was introducing the new admirals to the situation at hand. They discussed the state of the world and the troubling nature of quirks, with Halsey leading them to a war room filled with charts and a view of the port. Sims questioned the military rearming, and Halsey reassured him that while there may be a need for it in the future, it would be unlike anything they had seen before. He presented the history of quirks, highlighting the rise of All Might and the new laws governing quirk usage in Japan. The two admirals read through the regulations in disbelief, finding them to be utterly ridiculous. Who allowed such laws? Halsey explained that it was the Hero Commission, with support from the Prime Minister and President of Japan. They both sat in thought. Montgomery noted that the reliance on these heroes was almost non-existent in the military nowadays. Sims expressed concern, acknowledging the situation as troublesome. Halsey affirmed that they were there to be the middlemen between heroes and villains, supporting justice and true protection without discrimination. Sims asked if there was someone else involved, to which Rommel replied that their leader preferred to be called Captain. Halsey described the outfit, clarifying that it was a mix of 4 styles, minus the hooded part of the assassin's attire, replaced with a black overcoat featuring a Jolly Roger emblem on the back, along with a matte black mask and a specific hat. In the arena, Bakugo and 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻's fists connected, creating a shockwave that vibrated through the crowd, knocking some spectators off balance. They engaged in a fierce exchange of blows, with 𝐒𝐮𝐻 surprised to find Bakugo keeping pace with him. Bakugo shouted aggressively, expressing his longing for 𝐒𝐮𝐻 to be defeated, which made the fight feel intense and uncomfortable. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 urged Bakugo to stop saying die, feeling uneasy about the situation. Bakugo, undeterred, continued to charge at 𝐒𝐮𝐻, who was primarily evading his attacks. The crowd was wild, believing Bakugo was dominating the match. Conan questioned 𝐒𝐮𝐻's lack of retaliation, to which 𝐒𝐮𝐻 replied that he hadn't had the chance. 𝗟𝗶hes chimed in, calling 𝐒𝐮𝐻 a baby, prompting 𝐒𝐮𝐻 to retort that 𝗟𝗶hes wasn't fighting either. Bakugo continued his relentless pursuit, trying to land a hit while 𝐒𝐮𝐻 dodged skillfully. However, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 suddenly found himself struggling to breathe, collapsing to one knee and coughing violently, drawing concern from the announcers and the audience. They mistakenly thought he had inhaled Bakugo's explosive smoke, but the pain was genuine. As 𝐒𝐮𝐻 recovered, he noticed BLD on his hand, and in that moment of distraction, Bakugo struck from behind with a powerful left hook, followed by a massive explosion. The audience erupted in cheers, believing Bakugo had secured victory. But as the smoke cleared, they fell silent, realizing that 𝐒𝐮𝐻 was standing firm, holding Bakugo's fist in his metallic arm. Bakugo attempted to explode his way free, but it was ineffective. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 countered with a solid punch to Bakugo's gut, knocking the wind out of him. He continued to strike, leaving Bakugo hanging by the arm 𝐒𝐮𝐻 held. Leaning closer, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 whispered a challenge, but Bakugo defiantly refused to give up. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 then walked away, hands on his hips, leaving the crowd puzzled. Present Mike exclaimed that 𝐒𝐮𝐻 was giving Bakugo a chance to recover, interpreting it as a display of sportsmanship. Bakugo, fueled by ego, charged back at 𝐒𝐮𝐻, launching a series of explosive attacks. The crowd gasped in anticipation as 𝐒𝐮𝐻 stood still, waiting for the right moment. Just before Bakugo reached him, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 kicked hard against the ground, delivering a powerful strike to Bakugo's jaw that sent him flipping through the air before landing on his back, unable to continue. WB cheered, celebrating the intensity of the match. Midnight announced 𝐒𝐮𝐻 as the winner, and the stadium erupted in applause, with food and drinks flying through the air. Present Mike marveled at 𝐒𝐮𝐻's effortless move, while Izuku smirked subtly. In the student rooms, reactions ranged from shock to excitement, with the general studies students realizing the gap between their abilities and those of the hero course. Some hero course students even apologized to 𝐒𝐮𝐻's class. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 playfully called out a classmate, while Conan teased him about his earlier struggle. After a brief intermission, the top three competitors stood on the podium, 𝐒𝐮𝐻 in first place, Bakugo in second, still restrained, and Todoroki quietly in third. Midnight announced the awards, and All Might dramatically descended from above, ready to present the medals. He first honored Todoroki, placing the medal around his neck, which earned a smile from the young hero. Next, he approached Bakugo, who was thrashing about, making the medal presentation a challenge. But then Bakugo started shouting about how he didn't get the fight he wanted. So, he settled for putting the medal in his mouth. The announcer declared that the winner of this year's sports festival was 𝐒𝐮𝐻. The crowd erupted in cheers as Bakugo placed the medal around the back of your neck. He offered some words of encouragement that you barely registered, your mind drifting back to your collapse in the middle of the fight with Bakugo. Whatever had happened, it felt serious. The announcer called out to you, asking if you were all right. You blinked, responding with a simple acknowledgement. The announcer praised your fighting style, expressing high expectations for your future. The crowd joined in, chanting +Ultra. The announcer thanked everyone for their efforts, and for a moment, there was a pause before the crowd began shouting at him to say +Ultra again. You quickly made your way to your car, eager to avoid any more interactions as your thoughts were consumed by what had transpired in the ring. Whitebeard asked if you were all right, to which you admitted you weren't. You worried about what would happen in a real fight against a villain who could be faster than Bakugo, and you felt your reaction speed wasn't up to par. Conan reminded you that training was essential to improve. You sighed and leaned back in your seat, noticing a notification that only you could see. You slid it up to 27 and closed it, contemplating the situation. You had been pulled from the ocean by a mysterious woman who had offered you a chance at a new life, likening it to a game. You were now accompanied by a former terrorist and a man whose presence could shake a city block. 𝐶𝐿 apologized for the chaotic traffic and insisted on driving you home. You were puzzled by her presence, having never heard of her before. She claimed that Gabriel had sent her to you, as if she had foreseen this moment. During the ride, she asked if you were feeling well, and you replied that you were just a little tired. The rest of the journey was silent. Ryukaku, the dragon heroine, asked Rumi, the muscular bunny heroine, what she thought. Rumi, after finishing her soda, considered that you might be worth a closer look. Meanwhile, a shadowy figure observed the situation, expressing interest in you, noting that you had more combat experience than Midoriya. Shigaraki, confused, questioned why you mattered, but the figure insisted that you were worth observing. Once you arrived home, Chisato instructed you to sit on the couch while she gathered her medical equipment. As you waited, you examined a tablet with a transparent screen, realizing you were possibly the youngest person with military capabilities. Chisato took your BLD pressure and examined you, noting that your breathing was ragged. She suggested that it might be due to the competition and decided to take your BLD again. You groaned as she drew your BLD, distracted by your appearance on the screen. You looked like a formidable figure, a blend of pirate, assassin, and vigilante, which made you feel powerful. Chisato expressed concern for your well-being, and you insisted you were fine, though you had collapsed and coughed up BLD during the fight. She pointed out the bloodstains on your metallic hand, and you realized she was right. As she walked down the hall, she noticed the restored photos of you and your parents and asked if you had any distant family. You replied that you didn't know of any, recalling your father's background and your mother's origins. A flashback surfaced in your mind of a younger girl, your cousin, asking you to play a card game. You remembered her encouragement and how she had made you feel like you could be the best. When you returned to the present, you mentioned that your cousin had moved away. Chisato shrugged, simply curious, and then discovered that the fridge was empty. She exclaimed about the lack of food, and you admitted you had been hungry. She sighed, realizing she needed to go to the bank. You offered to accompany her, suggesting you could withdraw some of your money. You drove to the bank, which was labeled United Bank of Japan. Chisato questioned how you had a bank account at your age, and you explained that your parents had opened one for you before they passed away. You walked past the metal detector toward your favorite person, Bill, at the bank. He greeted you with a casual tone, commenting on your presence. You mentioned needing to withdraw $5,000, and he assured you he would take care of it. As Bill went to the back, Chisato turned to you, curious about your connection with him. You explained that he was the one your parents had opened the account with, and you had been depositing money ever since, except for a few paydays. You added that he was not someone to upset. Bill returned, handing you your money, and you wished him well, hoping his day would improve. He replied with a hint of his usual bravado, suggesting he was ready for anything that came his way. As you left the bank, you bumped into a guy wearing Yeezys, who quickly apologized. Bill's voice carried over, expressing his annoyance at the encounter. Afterward, you and Chisato went grocery shopping, then returned home to enjoy a meal before heading to your private island, which you humorously named Atlantis for its simplicity. You settled into a large chair in your office, reflecting on your past encounters with All Might, including a memorable incident where you had thrown him into the woods. You decided it was time to mend things with him, but writing a letter to express your intentions proved challenging. You wanted to convey that you hoped for a better relationship and suggested a meeting at the base of Mount Fuji, acknowledging the cost of travel. You sent off the letter both by mail and email, feeling a sense of relief afterward. Just then your assistant, Omura, entered with news about your scheduled flight to America for the Stark Convention, which excited you. Suddenly, Halsey burst through the door, interrupting your thoughts. You found yourself in a meeting with older men discussing military strategies. Rommel, a tall German man, outlined the strengths and weaknesses of their forces, while you struggled to stay engaged, wishing you had been warned about such dull meetings. 𝐼𝐚𝐬 explained that defeating stronger opponents would grant access to better resources, which you found daunting. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 then emphasized the importance of their group's image, wanting to be seen as protectors rather than villains in a society that was becoming increasingly corrupt. You reflected on your own experiences with the hero system, recalling a time when a good Samaritan was punished for intervening in a robbery. 𝐒𝐮𝐬's voice brought you back to the present as he teased you about your recent correspondence with All Might, reminding you of your past actions. You defended yourself, explaining that you had acted in self-defense against criminals. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 called you an idiot, to which you retorted with a playful jab at his age. The conversation continued, with Monty, another older man, questioning the term kid in reference to you, to which 𝐒𝐮𝐬 confirmed your age. The atmosphere in the room shifted slightly as the older men processed the implications of your youth and the weight of your actions. The British man scoffed, and Monty expressed his disbelief about being brought back from the dead to serve a child. 𝐒𝐮𝐻 sat up in his seat, contemplating the absurdity of their situation. He remarked that if life worked normally, they would all still be dead, and the ground beneath them wouldn't even exist. Yet here they were. Montgomery sighed and settled back down, while Sims picked up on 𝐒𝐮𝐻's words. He asked if 𝐒𝐮𝐻's use of we implied that he had also died. The other three men looked at 𝐒𝐮, surprised to learn that he had died too. 𝐒𝐮 slumped back in his seat, reluctant to discuss his death. He explained that he was supposed to be at the bottom of the ocean but was instead presented to a woman in white and given a job to protect humanity. He gestured outside and to his clothes, indicating that this had happened a year or two ago. Initially, he thought it was a dream, a result of being knocked out on his raft, yet he had an eye that spoke to him, literally. He pressed the side of his head near his eye, projecting a bright blue translucent screen a few feet in front of them for everyone to see. Sims apologized for bringing it up, realizing it was rude. 𝐒𝐮 dismissed the concern, mentioning that the whole system felt strange to him. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 chimed in, noting that they needed to get stronger, including 𝐒𝐮. 𝐒𝐮 raised an eyebrow, asserting that he was strong even without the system, capable of benching. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 shrugged, boasting about fighting the entire Japanese fleet with just 2 aircraft carriers. 𝐼𝐚𝐬 intervened, urging them not to bicker and emphasizing the need to work together. He echoed William's sentiment that the hero system was destined to fail, and when it did, they would be ready to replace it. Sims pointed out that they couldn't simply establish themselves as the primary force. Meanwhile, All Might was in his agency's head office, reading fan mail, regular mail, and the news. He was in his slim form since no one was around, and he couldn't remain in his muscular form all day due to his condition. After a while, he found reading fan mail quite dull. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, startling him. He pressed a button on his intercom to ask who it was and breathed a sigh of relief when it was just his friend, Detective 𝐒𝐮𝐬, who was aware of his condition and let himself in. All Might greeted 𝐒𝐮𝐬 warmly and thanked him for some mail he had brought from downstairs. He asked 𝐒𝐮𝐬 to look for a letter from the Safety Commission, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 nodded, scanning through the letters. All Might inquired about recent events, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 shared that things had been quite troublesome, mentioning the hero killer. All Might nodded, recalling the name, Stain. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 explained that the hero killer was gaining a fan base, a rowdy crowd that was becoming a rising problem. All Might sighed, agreeing with some of the hero killer's criticisms about the current state of hero society, where many top pro heroes had become little more than public advertisements for their brands. As he scrolled through his computer, something strange caught his eye, a message without a name, just a subject that read, "Sorry." When he opened it, his eyes widened, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 froze as well. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 urged All Might to look at the letter he handed him, and both of them were taken aback by its contents, which ended with a skull and swords. During this time, 𝐒𝐮 teleported back to his boat and booted up his PlayStation, logging into his franchise mode in Madden as he played. The old man in his head decided to comment on the situation, expressing his boredom and longing to escape from 𝐒𝐮's mind. 𝐒𝐮 dismissed him, insisting he wasn't hormonal. The old man raised an eyebrow, But 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽 continued to sing a song, while Conan, another presence in his mind, remarked on 𝐒/N's size even in this mental space. As the two revived souls bickered, 𝐶HISATO walked in, holding a newspaper. She dropped it in front of 𝐒/N, revealing a front-page story featuring him sheathing his sword after a confrontation with a gang leader. The headline questioned whether he was a villain or a vigilante, describing his actions as heroic yet villainous. 𝐒/N threw the paper out the window into the water, frustrated by how his good deeds were twisted. 𝐶HISATO sighed and approached him, concerned when she noticed him coughing violently. He covered his mouth, revealing specks of blood when he removed his hand. 𝐶HISATO quickly gathered her nursing equipment and placed a stethoscope on his back, asking him to breathe for her. As he followed her instructions, she detected something unusual and decided to take a blood sample for testing. 𝐒/N flinched at the mention of needles, but 𝐶HISATO reassured him it wouldn't hurt. After taking the sample, she mentioned that she could use his DNA to help reconstruct his family tree, possibly finding older relatives. 𝐒/N thought about it, knowing his father was an orphan, but he remembered his mother had a sister and a dark-haired cousin. After an event your mother wouldn't discuss, you hadn't seen her since you were about 7. You thought it couldn't hurt to go along with it. 𝐶HISATO grabbed another needle, and you felt a wave of nausea wash over you as she finished. She then got into her car and drove to the hospital, leaving you to continue your game. Conan remarked that a player named Marshawn Lynch looked overrated, which made you sputter in frustration. Meanwhile, All Might and Detective 𝐶𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐽 were in a room with the police chief after receiving a letter from the man involved in the white powder raid. They were concerned, to say the least. The chief noted that the man wanted to meet because he felt they had gotten off on the wrong foot. All Might acknowledged that he had charged in recklessly, which was understandable given the man's reaction. The chief placed the letter down on his desk and stood up, emphasizing that the man was responsible for the deaths of over 40 people and significant property damage, and they still did not know where his loyalties lay. Just then, there was a knock at the door, and the chief called for the person to enter. A man in his late 30s walked in, sporting dark brown hair and a beard. He introduced himself as Toya, an expert in history. All Might and 𝐶𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐽 exchanged confused glances, and 𝐶𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐽 asked how a history major could help. Toya explained that he was called in due to their recent encounters with the man. The chief inquired about the man's allegiance, and Toya described the dark gray and red Napoleonic-era uniform the man wore, complete with a black overcoat adorned with a skull and bones. The men accompanying him had similar patches on their shoulders. Toya dropped a photo of the flag from the mystery ship captured weeks ago and asked if they knew the significance of the black flag. All Might guessed it was related to pirates, but Toya clarified that while the black flag is commonly associated with piracy, its true meaning is allegiance to none other than the individual himself. All Might felt a sense of relief, realizing that at least the man wasn't aligned with All for One. 𝐶𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐽 pressed for more information about the skull and weapons, but Toya could only speculate that they might be mere decorations or symbols. The only way to find out would be to speak with the man directly. After a moment of contemplation, 𝐶𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲𝐽 asked what the chief thought they should do. The chief pondered for a moment before suggesting that it might be worth a shot to contact the man. About 4 hours later, you prepared some cheap ramen and continued playing your game. 𝗟𝗶𝐻𝗸 commented that your life was boring, to which you retorted that you wanted to be lazy. Conan reminded you about your upcoming convention in America, and you shrugged, mentioning that your flight was in 2 days. As you played Madden, frustrated by your inability to pull the player you wanted, 𝐶HISATO walked back in. She took off her shoes and went to put her things away. You welcomed her back and asked how the lab visit went. 𝐶HISATO replied that she hadn't looked at your family tree yet, but whatever information you had seemed to be eluding them, almost as if it didn't exist. She mentioned that they would soon need to get X-rays on you. Suddenly, your eye beeped, and a blue screen appeared in front of you just as you finally pulled the player you wanted. You exclaimed in excitement, and 𝐶HISATO jumped, asking what had happened. You showed her the screen, revealing that All Might wanted to meet with you. Her jaw dropped in disbelief, as she hadn't expected that to work. You read the email, noting that the meeting was set for an old fishing village outside the city to avoid attracting attention. You continued reading, noting that they would bring a security force, including some of the newer rising star heroes like 𝗏𝐼 and 𝐾𝐮𝐲𝐸. You clicked around on your device and initiated a call to your intelligence group. A young man with black hair answered, and you instructed him to gather information on 𝐾𝐮𝐲𝐸 and 𝗏𝐼, as well as others in the top 50, including hidden files and prison breakout percentages. He acknowledged your request and hung up, a timer appearing next to it indicating that you had 45 minutes for the investigation. Looking back at the letter, you noted that the meeting was scheduled for 10:30 at night, giving you time to prepare. 𝗏𝗟𝗧𝗟𝗘 returned to the room after reviewing some files and mentioned that she had found information about your family tree. Your mother had a sister who had 2 daughters, but her sister had died in a freak accident. The older sister, 𝗏𝗟𝐬𝐽, took custody of her younger sister, 𝗏𝐼𝐿. You shared that your mother had tried to distance herself from your aunt due to some troubling incidents. 𝗏𝗟𝗧𝗟𝗘 continued to read, revealing that 𝗏𝗟𝐬𝐽 had been placed in a mental hospital after a breakdown, while 𝗏𝐼𝐿 now provided for both of them and attended Hyaku Private Academy. You thought about the two, recalling that you only remembered playing with 𝗏𝐼𝐿. It was disheartening to hear about 𝗏𝗏, but you considered visiting them when you returned from America. 𝗏𝗟𝗧𝗟𝗘 then mentioned your father, noting that he had been orphaned, making it difficult to trace any relatives. As she flipped through the pages, she paused at a name that stood out. You asked what it was, and she hesitated, unable to believe the information despite it being verified by professionals. Finally, she turned the paper toward you and revealed that you were the only living descendant of Edward Teach, known as Blackbeard the Pirate. Meanwhile, All Might waited in the old town at an abandoned tea house, accompanied by newer pro heroes 𝗏𝗏, 𝐾𝐮𝐲𝐸, and 𝗏𝗏. 𝗏𝗏 expressed her concern about meeting with you, questioning whether it was a wise decision. All Might glanced at her sheepishly, acknowledging the situation. He explained that he had technically initiated the confrontation, and the others had merely defended themselves. Woods questioned why he kept referring to they, to which All Might replied that the mask the figure wore had a voice alternator. 𝗏𝗏 asked how he could tell, and All Might mentioned that after being in the business for so long, one could distinguish between a real and a fake voice behind a mask. 𝗏𝗏, arms crossed and seated, suggested they simply arrest the figure to remove another villain from the streets. All Might countered that they didn't yet know the figure's allegiance and didn't see him as a villain. 𝗏𝗏 clicked his tongue in frustration as they continued to wait. 𝗏𝗏 wondered if the figure had received All Might's message, to which he admitted it was a long shot and they weren't even sure if it had reached the right person. Suddenly, they heard clinking sounds in the distance, which grew louder. Woods asked what it was, and they all looked around, seeing no one at first. The clanging intensified until Woods pointed out a figure turning a corner. As the figure approached, they felt a sense of unease. The massive individual, towering at nearly 25 feet, had deep scars on their chest and wielded a gigantic 𝗏𝗏, dressed similarly to a man with a black hat but far more intimidating. The figure laughed heartily, causing everyone to tense up, with Locke even taking a fighting stance. The giant questioned what had everyone in a panic. In a moment of bravado, 𝗏𝗏 grew to 30 feet, intending to punch the giant. However, as her fist came down, he effortlessly caught it, shocking her with his strength. He commented on her poor form as she struggled to free her hand, but his grip was unyielding. Locke demanded that the giant let her go, asserting that she had attacked first and it was self-defense. The giant timed his release perfectly, allowing 𝗏𝗏's momentum to carry her into a nearby building. He chuckled at her misstep, but before the situation escalated further, a new voice interrupted from atop a house. A woman with short purple hair and golden eyes, dressed in a uniform covered by a white coat, addressed the giant, calling him Newgate. She remarked that 𝗏𝗏 was merely a beginner. The giant, Newgate, expressed his enjoyment of a good fight, while 𝗏𝗏 grew frustrated at their casual demeanor after an altercation with a pro hero. He accused them of assaulting a hero, but Newgate defended himself, stating that it was 𝗏𝗏's own foolishness that led to her predicament. Another voice chimed in, urging Newgate to avoid making new enemies before attempting to befriend them. The heroes turned their attention to a man sitting at a nearby bar, calmly pouring tea into multiple cups. He apologized for any offense caused by his colleagues and introduced himself as Captain 𝐻𝐻. He explained that he had gained a following that led to his title, pointing out a massive ship anchored in the bay, named the Enforcer. The heroes were taken aback by the ship's military capabilities, realizing the potential danger of the situation. Woods questioned how 𝐻𝐻 had come into possession of such a ship, noting that there were none left. 𝐻𝐻 casually offered tea, assuring them it was safe. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 remained skeptical, suspecting it might be poisoned. 𝐻𝐻 raised an eyebrow and demonstrated his trustworthiness by drinking from a cup, revealing a portion of his mask to do so. He then challenged 𝐼𝐬's distrust, which only made 𝐼𝐬 grumble as the heroes accepted their cups. 𝗟𝐿ady approached, looking disheveled and dazed. 𝐻𝐻 expressed concern for her condition, and she slurred her words in confusion. 𝐻𝐻 exchanged a deadpan look with 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽, who retorted that he could have thrown her across town instead. As the two continued their banter, Woods supported 𝗟𝐿ady, trying to keep the situation from escalating further. 𝗟𝐿ady was carried to the table, which had steaming cups of tea waiting for them. Dazed and indifferent, she took a big swig of her tea. 𝐼𝐬 looked at her with a mix of rage and horror, still convinced that 𝐻𝐻 intended to poison them. Yet, all 𝗟𝐿ady did was smile and give a thumbs up, expressing her delight in the tea. She exclaimed that it was amazing, and 𝐻𝐻 acknowledged her with a gentleman's bow, thanking her for the compliment. She then chugged the rest of the tea in mere seconds, leaving everyone momentarily stunned by her speed. Perhaps the cups were too small. Meanwhile, Conan sat elegantly at the bar, sipping her tea, with All Might doing the same, not wanting to appear rude. All Might asked why they had been summoned. 𝐻𝐻 quickly returned to the counter and began to explain. He stated that he was sorry for making them look foolish on national television, to which All Might accepted the apology, recalling how his friends had teased him about it after his mission. 𝐻𝐻 continued, wanting to clarify who he was and what he stood for. 𝐼𝐬 scoffed and turned away, dismissing 𝐻𝐻 as some vigilante who thought he could do as he pleased. All Might interjected, insisting that 𝐼𝐬's comment was unnecessary. 𝐻𝐻 regarded 𝐼𝐬 with a calm gaze, recalling information about him from his intelligence sources. He noted 𝐼𝐬's hero name, age, quirk, and even his performance level, which surprised 𝐼𝐬. 𝐼𝐬 demanded to know how 𝐻𝐻 had acquired this information, to which 𝐻𝐻 pointed out that it was all available on 𝐼𝐬's hero page. 𝐼𝐬 froze, realizing 𝐻𝐻 was correct. 𝗟𝐿ady, eager for attention, asked 𝐻𝐻 to share what he knew about her. 𝐻𝐻 took a moment to look her over, causing her to grow uncomfortable. Conan assured her that this was normal and to give it a moment. Suddenly, information about 𝗟𝐿ady appeared on 𝐻𝐻's invisible screen. He read aloud her hero name, age, quirk, and noted her impressive strength but also her lack of close-quarters combat skills, which could lead to unintended destruction. He mentioned her tendency to flirt for free food, which caused 𝗟𝐿ady to blush deeply, while Woods groaned in embarrassment. All Might gasped dramatically, and 𝐬𝐬 was left speechless. 𝗟𝐿ady protested, demanding to know how he knew such details. 𝐻𝐻 dismissed the screen, claiming it was merely a rumor, but he couldn't help but laugh childishly at the confirmation. As 𝗟𝐿ady's face turned an even deeper shade of red, Whitebeard's laughter echoed, startling the nearby wildlife. Conan continued to sip her tea with a small giggle. 𝐻𝐻 then turned his attention to All Might, and as information about the number 1 hero loaded onto his screen, All Might appeared nervous, his fingers twitching. 𝐻𝐻 noted All Might's quirk and battle prowess, but then he hesitated as he read about All Might's severe injury, which had drastically reduced his capabilities. The mention of All for One being presumed dead for 9 years sent a chill through 𝐻𝐻, as the word presumed carried heavy implications. All Might and the other heroes noticed 𝐻𝐻's sudden change in demeanor. All Might asked if something was wrong, and 𝐻𝐻 quickly reassured them, apologizing for his strange reaction. However, Whitebeard narrowed his eyes, sensing that 𝐻𝐻 had seen something troubling. 𝐬𝐬 broke the silence, demanding to know 𝐻𝐻's true identity and intentions. 𝐻𝐻, now in a serious mode, crafted a story that he could relate to without sounding insincere. He placed his teacup down and stood at the other side of the bar. He explained that he was neither a hero nor a villain, but he had begun his journey because he believed the hero society was failing. The hero's expression soured, anticipating another critique of their world. 𝐻𝐻 urged them to hear him out, and just then, a man in military gear entered, startling the heroes. 𝐻𝐻 introduced him as Lieutenant Turner, who stood at ease behind him. 𝐻𝐻 continued, explaining the origins of the Hero Public Safety Commission and how the hero society had evolved. He pointed out that as the number of people with quirks increased, many heroes no longer joined out of a longing to help but rather for fame and fortune. He cited 𝗟𝗏𝐿, the number 2 hero, as an example of someone who had a dark past of domestic abuse. The 4 heroes listened in shock, grappling with the reality of 𝐻𝐻's claims. 𝐻𝐻 explained that Toya Todoroki, the eldest son of Enji Todoroki, had been involved in a serious conflict with his father, leading to his hospitalization and subsequent disappearance. His wife, Rei Todoroki, had been admitted to a mental health facility by Enji himself, despite having shown no previous signs of mental health issues, which raised suspicions. The youngest son, Shoto Todoroki, bore a burn on his face, a result of his mother finally breaking under the pressure of Enji's harsh treatment. This revelation brought a sense of sadness, as it painted a picture of a troubled home life. All Might felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. He had known Enji to be tough, but this was beyond comprehension. There was no way the commission would allow such actions to go unpunished. 𝐻𝐻 presented the paperwork for Rei's admission and the doctor's notes regarding the children, continuing his discourse. He highlighted the new wave of oppression brought about by quirks, where individuals without quirks, and even some with physical alteration quirks, faced bullying and disdain. The hero society viewed them as worthless or freaks. He recounted how the pro-hero Miriko had endured similar bullying before rising to prominence. Children with quirks deemed slightly dangerous were often labeled as future villains and ostracized. He described the tragic fate of a man who resorted to robbing a gas station out of desperation, only to be publicly humiliated and branded a villain. 𝐻𝐻 expressed his disgust as he tossed the remaining paperwork onto the table, allowing the heroes to skim through it. Their expressions reflected horror at the truths that the Safety Commission had covered up to protect the reputation of popular heroes. Deaths and casualties had been erased from memory. 𝐻𝐻 criticized the Commission's policy of injure but do not kill, arguing that it was foolish. The heroes, still reeling from the information, looked at him with confusion. Locke attempted to reason that they could not kill someone for committing a crime, as it would make them no better than the villains. 𝐻𝐻 shook his head, insisting that such a policy should only apply to minor offenses. For serious criminals, murderers, traffickers, and others, he believed they should be dealt with on the spot. The heroes listened intently as 𝐻𝐻's tone shifted from calm to icy. He recounted a traumatic childhood memory of his father, a policeman who had captured a villain responsible for multiple murders. His father had been threatened by the villain, and after a prison breakout, the villain had come for 𝐻𝐻's family. 𝐻𝐻 paused, his voice trembling as he recalled the horror of witnessing his mother being attacked, paralyzed by the villain's quirk. When the heroes finally arrived, it was far too late, and he was left orphaned, haunted by that traumatic memory. 𝐻𝐻's gaze pierced through the heroes as he expressed the pain of watching his mother beg for mercy, unable to look away. He lamented that they could not understand the depth of his suffering, as they focused more on public perception than on their responsibilities. He had once harbored hatred for heroes but had chosen a different path, vowing to dismantle the corrupt hero society and replace it with a more just system, starting in Japan. As he walked past the heroes, they instinctively took defensive stances, expecting a confrontation, but he simply moved on, joined by Conan at Whitebeard's side. 𝐻𝐻 declared that he did not wish to harm those who genuinely wanted to help, but he sought true justice for the innocent. He warned the heroes that they had not yet betrayed the public, but should they do so, they would face the full force of Crimson Dawn. The trio made their way to the shoreline, where 𝐻𝐻 climbed onto Whitebeard's back, leaping onto the carrier. The heroes watched in frozen terror, realizing that 𝐻𝐻 harbored a deep grudge against heroes, yet he was not indiscriminate in his targets. The emergence of Crimson Dawn would undoubtedly create new challenges for them. Turner called out to 𝐻𝐻, asking him to wait. Whitebeard laughed heartily, praising 𝐻𝐻's performance, which had been convincing even to him. As they sailed back to their base, now dubbed Valhalla, Conan expressed concern about potential repercussions from the heroes. 𝐻𝐻 reassured her, revealing that he had instructed Turner to capture their conversation on camera. Turner handed the camera to 𝐻𝐻, who replayed the footage, ending with a close-up of his own eyes. Whitebeard commended 𝐻𝐻's cleverness, and 𝐻𝐻 smiled, removing his mask. Conan noted that they were now officially exposing themselves to the world, which would inevitably attract opposition. 𝐻𝐻 acknowledged this, explaining that people would want to know the identity of the man behind the mask. He demonstrated how the mask could only be removed in a specific way, ensuring that anyone else attempting to do so would receive a shock. Meanwhile, the four heroes reported back to the Hero Safety Commission, where the atmosphere was tense, with members wearing dark expressions and frowns. One member voiced outrage at being spoken about in such a manner, insisting that without heroes, there would be no order, no justice. The four heroes, after witnessing reports of cover-ups and questionable actions by other heroes, found their trust in the board members severely shaken. Even Rocklock, who had always respected and adhered to their rules, began to question everything. All Might, who had never held them in high regard, lost even more faith in their integrity. As the board members argued over the situation, a receptionist burst into the room. The receptionist urgently informed the president that there was breaking news everywhere. The board members exchanged puzzled glances, unsure of what could have caused such a commotion, but the heroes felt a chill run down their spines. There was no way he had recorded everything, was there? He had no camera. The only one who could be the source. The president pressed a button on her high desk, and news reports from all channels across the country and the world filled the room. An American reporter announced the emergence of a new vigilante group known as Crimson Dawn in the Pacific. An English reporter added that this group harbored a deep resentment toward the World Hero Association due to a traumatic event in their childhood. A Spanish reporter mentioned Captain 𝐻𝐻 and his two accomplices, Conan and Whitebeard. A French reporter noted that there were no records of a man named Newgate or a woman named Conan. A German reporter revealed that this group had access to military assets and possessed unknown abilities. A Japanese reporter questioned the implications for the Hero Association and the pro-heroes, wondering how they would respond. Everyone froze. This individual had single-handedly thrown the world into chaos without raising a weapon, simply by sharing his past. The news was trending and people around the globe, both quirkless and those with quirks deemed obsolete or villainous, rallied behind his cause, feeling that finally someone had spoken out for them. The president declared that they must find this man and eliminate him. They could not allow all their hard work to be undone. All members agreed, but the four heroes present remained silent, lost in thought about the words Captain 𝐻𝐻 had shared with them. Later, 𝐒/N returned home and finally had the chance to assess the impact of their actions. As they packed for the Stark Convention, news reports interrupted every channel to cover their recent stunt. A notification chimed, announcing that 𝐒/N had been recognized worldwide and awarded 200,000 points, which could be used to upgrade Valhalla and their assets. 𝐒/N whistled to themselves, impressed. Another notification appeared, presenting a choice that could alter the legacy and performance of their organization. They could either sacrifice the ability to summon a fictional character forever or learn a new power system. 𝐒/N paused, realizing that such an opportunity had never arisen before. The prospect of learning a power system could be incredibly advantageous. Curious, 𝐒/N asked 𝗂𝐵 about his power. 𝗂𝐵 explained that his abilities came from devil fruits, which granted users powerful abilities at the cost of losing their ability to swim and becoming weaker when submerged in water. He possessed the 𝗟𝗓𝗓 no Mi, which allowed him to distort reality and create earthquakes. He elaborated on the various types of devil fruits and their capabilities, noting their potential for great power in the right hands. 𝐒/N then turned to Conan, inquiring about her abilities. Conan explained that they used chakra, which was similar to Newgate's haki but different in both combat and daily life. She discussed the advantages and disadvantages of chakra usage, emphasizing its utility. With the current state of Crimson Dawn, 𝐒/N realized that they could not rely solely on 3 strong individuals to protect their cause. they needed to recruit more members. However, after hearing about the powers of W, B, and Conan, 𝐬/N felt that Quirks seemed significantly weaker in comparison. With a sigh, 𝐬/N contemplated the weight of their decisions. Conan asked if 𝐬/N liked the new arm attachment. 𝐬/N responded affirmatively but expressed concern about the appearance of the device, jokingly wondering if it would attract unwanted attention. Conan instructed 𝐬/N to put it on and click it into place. After adjusting the device to fit snugly, 𝐬/N flexed the arm and accidentally smashed a nearby pot with the force. 𝐬/N remarked that it felt powerful, to which Conan cautioned against using it for harm. Suddenly, footsteps approached the boat, and 𝗧𝗧𝗧 called out for 𝐬/N, prompting a wave of panic. Conan urged 𝐬/N to hide, leading them to rush into the bathroom. In a frantic attempt to remove the arm, 𝐬/N struggled with the device, grunting in frustration. 𝗧𝗧𝗧, unaware of the commotion, checked in from outside the bathroom, mentioning she had brought groceries to help with healthier meals. 𝐬/N thanked 𝗧𝗧𝗧 but continued to wrestle with the stubborn arm. Conan revealed that there were pressure points that needed to be punched to release the device. 𝐬/N approached the mirror, located the points, and began to punch them. Each impact echoed in the small space, causing 𝗧𝗧𝗧 to grow concerned about the noise. As 𝐬/N continued to punch, the sounds of thuds filled the air, prompting 𝗧𝗧𝗧 to rush to the bathroom door, worried about 𝐬/N's well-being. 𝐬/N opened the door, attempting to play it cool, but 𝗧𝗧𝗧 questioned the noises she had heard. 𝐬/N quickly fabricated a story about slipping and assured her that they were fine. 𝗧𝗧𝗧 sighed, reminding 𝐬/N to be more careful before heading to the kitchen to prepare dinner. 𝐬/N let out a relieved breath, reflecting on how close they had come to being discovered. Conan teased 𝐬/N about their panic, but 𝐬/N shot back, pointing out that Conan hadn't been much help. Just then, a sharp pain surged through 𝐬/N's head, causing them to recoil in shock. The intensity of the pain escalated, overwhelming 𝐬/N until they lost consciousness, sprawled out on the bed. In 𝐬/N's mindscape, Conan called out, worried about 𝐬/N's condition, but received no response. Suddenly, she sensed a presence behind her and instinctively powered up her chakra, demanding to know who was there. The mysterious figure introduced themselves as a new partner, claiming to have been sent by a shiny woman to meet another soul, which Conan assumed was 𝐬/N. Curious yet cautious, she inquired about their name.